Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Basalt Town Council meeting for August 9, 2022. Good to see good, robust turnout here in our audience, and we will start our meeting tonight with the call to order. So it seems that order is in place, and we'll do the roll call.
All right. Let's begin with Angela Anderson.
Here.
Glenn Drummond.
Here.
David Knight.
Here.
Elise Hoddle.
Present.
Ryan Slack.
Here.
Bill Kane.
Yes.
And Dieter Schindler.
Present.
Thank you. A-team is present, sir.
All right, well, tonight we begin with a larger than normal consent agenda, and just in the interest of transparency, I'm going to kind of rattle through what these items are. And should anyone on council want to pull any of these off for further discussion, that is your, that is a possibility here. So, the first is the minutes from July 26th. The second is a resolution, number 46, series of 2022. It's a resolution of the town authorizing the staff to enter into a contract with Rocky Mountain Custom Landscapes for the linear park irrigation system.
That was number 45.
Beg your pardon?
That was number 45. You said 46.
Yeah, resolution number 45.
Yeah, just clarifying.
Oh, yeah. And then resolution number 46 is a resolution approving a one-time cost of living stipend for employees. I'm just going to say something quick about that. This is a one-time distribution. If you've been following the news, the coffers of the town of Basalt are robust as they are. We're way ahead of schedule here in terms of anticipated revenue for the year. And some of that, or a big chunk of it, is due to inflation. And I think our town manager, really with staff, the managerial staff, thought long and hard about the proposition whereby we as a municipality are reaping these big revenue streams due to inflation, but holding our staff's salaries constant. So this is an attempt to put a finger on the scale here and balance things out and try to allow our employees to kind of keep up to some degree with inflation. So that's why we're doing that, and I'm just mentioning that in the interest of transparency. So number 47, resolution number 47 is a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt authorizing staff to enter into a contract with Burlingame Construction for construction of the Basalt River Park bandshell project. Resolution number 48 is a resolution of the Town of Basalt authorizing staff to enter into a contract with LLC Sculpture for construction of the Basalt River Park climbing structure. The next one, continued to August 23rd, 2022, is the continued public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 14, and that one has to do with the Basalt Circle grocery store redevelopment project. We're not going to be hearing that tonight. We're continuing that until August 23rd. And then the last is we're going to continue also the public hearing and first reading on ordinance number 15, and that's the ordinance that approves code amendments for municipal code, amending the town code 1630, community serving commercial zone district. So they're the consent items. It's a long list. So
Can I ask for one clarification?
Yes, please.
On the bandshell and the climbing structure, one is the exterior and one is the interior?
Yeah. So if you look at the drawing, essentially the climbing structure seems to kind of wrap around the outside of the back, but I think some of it's also on the inside.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's like somewhat integrated,
Okay.
Is what I was picking up from it. And is that, yeah, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Is it?
Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. So our consent agenda is behind us. Next order of business is our call to the public, and this is an opportunity for anyone in the public that would like to address town council on any matter that is not on the agenda for tonight. So this is not a forum to talk about a specific project. It's if you have a general comment about matters not on the agenda tonight, we'd welcome you to come up. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please state your name and address. That's it. So come on up, if you'd like to.
Hi, my name is Chris McLaughlin. I run the Aspen Repair there on Midland Avenue, and I'm kind of concerned about what's going to happen to the center lane for deliveries. There's a lot of the business owners are really concerned about that. If you put planters in the middle there, it's really going to mess things up, I think, especially with widening the sidewalks
Yeah.
and limiting the parking, and probably parking enforcement. And one more thing, Basalt needs a town festival again. We haven't had one in a long time.
I think we're all on board with that.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
So we're gonna have a whole presentation on, I don't know if you want to hang around for that, but we're going to get into the Midland Avenue streetscape improvements a little later on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
And there is a provision for, I think these guys are thinking about using the angled parking spaces in the morning to get delivery trucks out of the middle of the street. So that's
Yeah,
one of the,
I think they're necessary, though.
yeah.
I mean, we all need things delivered, you know?
So we're going to get into that a little bit later tonight.
Okay.
But thank
Thank
you
you.
for your comments. Anyone else in the audience like to address town council? Anybody calling in?
If you're calling in and would like to comment under public comments, please raise your hand. No
Okay.
hands up.
So with that, then we will move on to mayor and council reports and comments. So floor is open for anybody from council that would like to provide an update, please.
So I apologize, I don't have my notes with me, I just arrived back in town. But I wanted to give a quick update on what was formerly, it's now just gonna be a symbol like Prince, formerly known as the Roaring Fork Regional Housing Coalition. So after some deep discussion and looking into our souls, we decided that we felt like using the Roaring Fork moniker was maybe not as comprehensive and inclusive as we wanted to be, because we have some members in the Colorado Valley and some interest even further afield in the Colorado Valley, and so we wanted those folks to feel welcome. So the new name is the West Mountain, help me Heather, West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. And there's also some synergy around West Mountain. There's a couple other organizations that use that West Mountain moniker to also be inclusive of a larger geographic area. So we thought that had some good feels around it. So that is a formal change. That means that any future contributions of seed money will go to West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. Also, excitingly, we did receive the IHOP grant, which was the one from DOLA. I'm looking at you again. Heather's gonna be my second brain right now. And so we're really excited about that. That one's gonna help us to put together a strategic plan, figure out like funding and staffing, and then also do some policy analysis across all of the communities that are involved in this initiative. And finally, we had a presentation at our board meeting last Thursday from the consultant that we had hired with some of the original money from maybe
the contribution that we had,
No, it was the workshop group. So there was.
from the roadmap, oh,
Yes,
sorry,
thank you, the
okay.
roadmap.
Mhm.
So just back history for our new counselors, there was sort of this roadmap group that was on a parallel with the formation of the Regional Housing Coalition, so we sort of like combined forces as far as the housing aspect was concerned. And so they put together a toolkit of what we're calling development neutral initiatives, basically looking at like best practices around the valley and around the state. And so then the next step will be sort of culling through those initiatives and figuring out which ones to make a priority to actually build out and to know, like, you know, how to fund it and how to administer it and what kind of staff do we need and, you know, what kind of program dynamics are around that. And then hopefully at some point in the fall, when ARPA money is available, then we'll be able to, like, we'll be set up to say, like, hey, you know, this is what we would like to have grant money go towards, so.
Well, that's great progress. That's exciting. Long time coming. Thanks for putting the time in on that, Elise. That's
It's,
really
yeah, it's pretty
important.
exciting. Good stuff.
Really great stuff. Anyone else comments, reports?
Just wanted to say congratulations to the 4 organizations that received the BPAC money
Oh, great. Yeah.
for the grant program money. I think that's a pretty cool deal, and just as another reason we have a fantastic community.
Great. Thanks for that. Kudos to our police department for, I know this is really not the correct kind of description of the event. It's like not Boys Night Out. It was like, it has some other, I know there's another name for this.
National
Night
Night
out.
Thank you.
Wasn't one of those nights.
That's right, National Night Out. So anyway, great success, and really appreciate you guys getting out in front of the public, and just nothing but good stuff to get a chance for people to interact with our officers out there. So it was, by all reports, a really successful night, so thank you for doing that. So with that, I think we can roll to the manager's report.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a few things to report. Got word today that we had gotten some bids for completing the landscaping at the east entrance sign, the basalt sign that we installed last year. So that landscaping will be starting here in the not too distant future. That one's a little bit more challenging. There's no water out there, and so it's all going to be kind of low water, xeriscape type landscaping. But I think it'll look pretty nice out there. One of the parts of the contract was for the company installing it to do some hand watering for 2 years. So I think it was a full 2 years, just to get those established. So that, in addition to the natural rain and or snow, should help it get established. The second thing is, if you haven't been up to the community garden recently, I just heard from Jerry Terwilliger, who spearheaded a project up there to build a new shade structure. So we had that commissioned through a gentleman that works at the high school and helps with the sort of wood shop class there. He runs that and took that on as a project, and that's now completed. So it looks really nice. Thirdly, of course, all of council and staff are aware, but for the public's benefit too, Christy has let us know that she is moving on from Basalt and has accepted a job in Carbondale as their finance director. So we'll miss Christy here helping us out with our finances. And
She hasn't received approval from the mayor yet, which I think
oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about
I'm
that.
gonna hold off a little bit before we get too far ahead of ourselves here.
That's right. But that job is posted. Big shoes to fill there, but we wish Christy well on her next professional adventure. And then just lastly, I'd let the mayor know earlier today, but we're working on budget, and I did get a proposal back from Basalt Connect, and had informed RAFTA that we would seek the similar grant funding as we did last year, and then had written a grant application to them, which I turned in last week. And so as those kind of things needed to be in place prior to, you all discussing the merits of continuing that service, but just wanted to let you know that's out there. So that's all I have.
The board meeting is this Thursday, so I'll be there agitating for renewal of the Basalt Connect, which, I think people like. It's really, really working. So
Yep.
hopefully we'll get maybe by September meeting, we'll get some recap on this summer's numbers, but I
That's
think
what I
we're
was
gonna
gonna
find them to be pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will then move to presentation. Any questions for Ryan before we go on? Okay. So next item are presentations. The first one is a, usually kind of a interesting presentation. This one's very cheery. This is the second quarter financials, so.
Sorry, that's my football. Maybe,
Is that in the
maybe
job
more appropriate
description?
for Super Bowl.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
You have to be very excited about numbers.
that's right.
Says it right in there.
Absolutely. A huge thank you once again to Finance Advisory Board, which Deirdre used to be a part of, on putting together the format of this report, which hasn't changed since the last year. It seems to provide us the best information and is pretty succinct for everybody in giving what we need, but not too much. So looking at our revenues and where they're coming in, so property tax is a little higher than what we would anticipate. Usually it's around 9 to 10% for the entire year, but we get that in the first part of the year. So that makes sense. It's a little higher as a percentage. And our sales tax at 46% is a little bit lower than the normal 60 to 65% you would anticipate there. The remainder of them are fairly consistent with what you would anticipate in the budget. If you look on the general fund expenditure side, looking at, so Public Works and Parks is 52% of our expenditures, but most of that, roughly 1.8 million, was for that land purchase that we had completed earlier. So that's going to go a little bit more in line. Usually our police is a little bit bigger piece of the pie than you'd see there. Everything else is fairly in line with what you'd anticipate. So the next page. Okay, so thanks, James. And, okay, budget to actual, if you look, is what the mayor was kind of stating a little bit earlier about how our revenues are doing. We're at revenue before other at 62% for the year, and we're only at 50% of the year completed. And this is on our general fund, so, I mean, that's pretty gosh darn good. I mean, there's a couple big highlights I would note on that. Obviously, is our property tax. Usually we get in almost all of it now. So that one, it does skew the results a little bit. But when you look at sales tax, at 52%, it really doesn't tell the story because really we're closer to 17% from prior year. So it's just a matter of when the timing of receipt of that is. Usually we get a lot of that in towards the later part of the year with the ski season and the holidays. But so we're doing really good on those fronts, and then also in our licenses and permits is another big thing on unrestricted building permits right towards the top of the screen there. We're way over budget on that on the revenue side, which is a good thing when you're talking revenues. So that one is another positive for the town. It's anybody's guess what's going to happen for building over in the future. So I think we're tending to be a little more conservative as we start our 2023 budget than that. So looking over to expenditures, well, I should go to other financing sources first, sorry, way towards the bottom. You just note that the certificates of participation, we had already taken those out at the 1.337 million. And so that's all done. The rest of it is just as what the budget would state, and no surprises there. On the expenditure side, we're at 39%, roughly 40% of our expenditures for year to date. I think, usually as of June 30th, we really just don't have a lot of our expenditures yet in our books for a lot of our capital projects. So we will see those come online here shortly. But things are actually looking pretty favorable on our expenditures right now. No large anticipated overages or anything at this point. So if you go to the next page, And then restricted funds, obviously, most of our restricted funding is sales tax again for post. And then 17.9% is for the RETAs, which is actually fairly high comparatively, but it's just we've had a lot of property changeovers of hands. We're seeing a slowdown in that a little bit though now over the last month or two. So I don't anticipate that's going to continue. If you want to go down to the next one. So on restricted funding, so lodging tax is a real favorable compared to budget at 70% in thus far. And you see that on our sales tax reports too, is our lodging tax is doing fairly well in our the lodging industry, which is really great. Tobacco tax is yet another time still favorable. We just can't quite keep ahead of that one, but it's good. Obviously doing good work for the community as well and the school district. And licenses and permits, as I stated a little bit earlier, our RETA ones are already on budget, so we've already received all the funding and we were anticipating, and same with our Silverest Meadows RETA, but I don't think we're going to be 200% over budget. I think it is kind of waning a little bit, but we're going to be slightly over on that on our revenue side. So total revenue 58.5% for the half a year. And then on the expenditure side, there's still a lot remains to be spent. There's just not a lot that we've completed yet, but obviously we're still working on the Basalt River Park, on the post, and a lot of those projects, and the administrative side as well. And that's mostly your a lot of your committees that still need to do that. Those expenditures for that, such as Green Team is a great example, BPAC, all of that. So, okay. If you go to the next page, this is pretty easy. Bond fund is in and out. That's just paying for your debt. So, and we're getting in all of our property tax, no concerns there. Capital construction fund, we report that in a separate report on the detail side, but we're still, I mean, we're just keeping track of that right now, and we have some pretty detailed budgets on that that we're tracking with planning. On the water fund side, the big benefit is really in the tap fees and surcharges, once again related to building earlier this year. So so that's great that we're going to have a little more money in our water fund as a result of those two items compared to budget, and our expenditures, so far there's no large changes there, so looking good.
Great, excellent.
Okay, and CTF is just, we haven't spent anything, that's for the lottery proceeds, so I think that's it.
Christie, back to the inflation discussion, so
Yeah.
Looking at our sales tax, which is doing extremely well, even over last year, which is really kind of surprising. Even corrected for inflation, is there still positive growth out there
Yeah,
on sales
'cause-
tax? I mean, gross sales are still up, even
That's
corrected
correct.
for inflation.
yeah, that's a great question, Mayor. So we're looking at 17.1% year over year increase you'll see in the next report. And the last Mountain Plains inflation report showed 9.1% inflation. So we're running over inflation, roughly about 8% higher. And we've got 2% that we estimated on our budget because we were looking at anything that was going to be increases in sales tax pretty much coming in and helping to offset some of the potential overages on the large capital projects we're undertaking.
Okay, any questions from council for Christie on our second quarter financials? I guess we're gonna have to come to Carbondale if these numbers start slacking off here.
Oh, thank you guys so much. It's been my honor working for each one of you. You guys are fantastic. I really mean that.
Likewise, you did a great job for this town and got us through some scrapes, with Tabor and just getting our city finances up on a very credible basis. And
I love to do it. It's one of my passions is helping towns and cities and definitely communities, and fiscal transparency and accountability. So let the saga
Yeah,
continue.
thanks, Christy.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, moving on here. Our next order of business is to receive a presentation on the Midland Avenue Streetscape project. So it's Michelle and Catherine. You don't look like Michelle. It says Michelle, but
Yeah, no, she's
She's
here as
virtual.
well. She's virtual today. Thank you, Mayor, for having us. Yes, we have Michelle on the line, and she's available.
Oh, good.
And you know me, Catherine, I'm the town engineer. We're presenting you tonight where we are with the Midland Avenue Streetscape project. Just a status update. As you'll remember, our team, we've got Heather here, and I'll let everyone on the design team introduce themselves that's in the room.
I'm Elise Wolf, I'm with Connectical Design and I'm the project manager.
Susan Gervas, right?
Jennifer Shell, Stephen Devas.
Dave Detweiler, the owner's rep.
And then online, I think we have a few folks as well. Is there anybody we need to let in?
I think we have Mike White online, and we've got Stephanie Helfenbein from Sopris is online.
Should we bump her up, James?
We can.
Good evening,
But if,
Mayor and Council. It's Michelle.
I'm Michelle.
We can hear you.
Yeah, so
We
I
have
think Mike,
Kim and Michael. We have a few people from Cushing Terrell. As you'll remember, they're our civil lead on the project, and they'll be here to chime in as needed as we plug along with where we are. Then next slide, please. The next slide just reminds you all where we are with the project area. As you'll recall, it runs from the barber shop down the full length of Midland to the intersection with Two Rivers Road, and includes the spur in front of Town Hall west as it goes to Merino Park. Next slide.
And just a little summary here. The project is really based on two pillars of economic development and infrastructure resiliency. Kind of a fun factoid here. If we compare sales tax revenue from pre-COVID in 2019 to today, even during our off-season from December to May, our sales tax revenue in restaurants alone is up 22%. And that's not because we've had new restaurants built in between these years. It's because we've seen the expansion of use in the pedestrian zone and outside. So we know that this project is going to promote further economic development in our historic district. Next slide. And just a reminder, the community voted for this economic development infrastructure project overwhelmingly last fall, with over 900 votes supporting the project. Next slide. And then lastly, what I'll share with you is that from a planning perspective, the project really speaks to multiple goals in our 2020 master plan. Our project team has conducted extensive outreach regarding the design, and now we're starting to move into outreach regarding economic development for the businesses along Midland during construction. The businesses have started helping me generate some great ideas on what we're going to do to keep them alive during construction, but also how we're going to capitalize on the opening of Basalt River Park next year, and what events we can create there that will help maintain activity in our downtown core during construction. And some fun ideas have included mural exhibitions on sound walls, and even the idea of possibly reviving River Days. So it's important for you to know that during a lot of our outreach so far, we've heard more questions about how we're going to help the businesses survive construction than concerns about the design. There are questions, of course, about the design, but overwhelmingly, we want to know about how we're going to help through construction. So we anticipate being back in front of you later this fall with a marketing plan about how we're going to support those businesses. Next slide.
So as you know, the utilities have reached the end of their intended life through the streetscape, and we wouldn't want to invest millions of dollars at the street level without, looking at that aging infrastructure below and making sure we're bringing that up to snuff. So some of the goals will be to upsize that water line to make sure there's enough flows for sprinklering and other emergency needs. Again, those water lines are meeting their maturity. And then also just making sure we're forward thinking around, new technologies that have come into place, fiber, being, electric ready for EV chargers and things like that. So all of that will be taken into consideration. And then finally, at this point, the stormwater infrastructure that's out there is really substandard. A lot of it is surface conveyed. It, of course, goes to the 4-bay down near RMI before it hits the river, but the intent will be to create some further water quality improvements along the way, and then bring that subsurface and really create a more viable stormwater system that will convey the water both in our, in our summertime rain events, and then also in the winter it will help mitigate some of those icing and, largely the icing issues that we have along the streetscape.
Catherine, I noticed sanitary sewers not listed there. Are we working with Basalt Sanitation? Are they team players? And
Yeah, we're working closely with them. We've done some, in partnership with the district, have done some investigation of that main as it runs down Midland, and we've come to the fortunate realization that that main was lined just in 2011, and generally speaking, once a line is lined, it really provides another 40, 50 years of life to it.
Wow.
So we'll be able, so initially we had budgeted some chunk of money to help replace that main. We'll be able to reinvest that in the project in other ways. We're still looking at the service connections, and we'll be replacing those as needed, but we came to through videoing the line and investigating that line, we've come to the agreed upon realization with the district that there's a large portion of it that doesn't need to be replaced.
That's good news, actually.
Yeah, it is good news.
I thought those liners were guaranteed till the first rain or something, but apparently they have a little longer life than that.
Yeah, it's
great.
true. Yeah, it is good news. Next slide, please. So the other major infrastructure piece that we'll see improvement is access for all. Really, at this point, the streetscape is quite substandard as it relates to ADA access. So creating those better connections for those in need of it will really be a key part of the project. Creating better crosswalks, the ramps, in places there's stormwater grates right in the middle of a ramp, which provides some issues. So making sure there's broader access for all will be a large portion of the project. Next slide.
All right, I will jump in. So where are we right now, and what are we trying to do tonight? So we are at a key juncture in this project. I think the last time we saw you guys, maybe end of May, something like that. We had done a fair amount of our initial outreach. You guys saw kind of some of those initial alternatives, throw all the ideas out there, see what folks think. Since that point, you'll see we have coalesced a couple of alternatives, reviewed those internally, and come to the preferred alternative tonight. So we are here at what we would consider the launching point into full project design. So where we begin the true design of the civil engineering, et cetera, and launch into 30%. So tonight is really ensuring that we get the full blessing and the go-ahead with the skeleton and the framework and the real solid bones of the concept this evening to launch into project design. We will continue that project design, 30, 60, and 90% through the end of the year, with the intention to begin construction as early as possible in 2023. There've been some really, frankly, it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Stutzman Baz and the entire design team in this sort of integrated process. They're bringing forward really great ideas to, figure out how to get into the ground as soon as we can, and how to work with all the business owners and everything else to kind of make this work. So it's been really great so far. So start construction as soon as we can, and then, looking at all through 2023 and effectively 2024, and try to be wrapping up by summer, fall of 2024. Next slide. I won't linger on this one. You all have seen this, I think, in May. Probably the most site analysis that we've been conducting since May was what Catherine referenced. So a lot more exploratory process of where our groundwater stands, what that looks like, how quickly we could get into the ground, what its level is, cameraing, and that's done through the potholing, various analysis of the sewer and the camera, and all sorts of things that people with more letters after their name than I have participate in and do. So, but we've been really excited to really fold all of this into this preferred design that you're going to see tonight. We can do our next slide. So if you recall, a lot of this kind of, up here at the top of this slide was where we last engaged with you all. Our first community response, what did people want to see in the streetscape, what made Basalt Basalt, all of those cool things. Throwing out the ideas, if you remember, we had rooms and linear and Woo Nerf. We did a second community survey based on some of those initial ideas, came back with a couple of options we really reviewed internally as a team, and with kind of select stakeholders, et cetera, and have come to this preferred option this evening. Outreach from the preferred option that you'll see tonight, we've done 2 presentations, and that was a very targeted owners and tenants presentation on July 22nd and July 27th. We had really surprisingly good. We were very excited about our attendance. Probably between the 2 of them, it was 35, 40, somewhere in there, in that range. So we did a virtual and in-person, so we presented here and we did it simultaneously virtual, and yeah, had really good attendance, so some of the feedback you'll hear tonight. And then our own design team reviews. Next slide. So, early on, we definitely heard from the community this feedback you'll see. Less is more. Basalt has a lot of funk and it has a lot of history, and we don't want to see that wiped clean. Celebrate the things that we're doing really well, like the landscape and these flowers, and people come in and it's like gardens are amazing. So we heard that early on from our recent presentations. These are a few of the bullet points you guys probably saw. So construction and what's going to happen, how do you support us, as Michelle mentioned. One of the biggest, probably the equal to that, is parking enforcement. So now, plus whatever you do in the future, how do we actually kind of enforce the parking we have? And then, further this maintenance plan, making sure that whatever we install, we can actually maintain so it continues to look great. And then just in general, this like collaborative, constructive thinking about, how to support the businesses throughout this whole process. You will see the last bullet point is something we have throughout tried to kind of put, no pun intended, in the parking lot, or put a pin in it. So this whole idea of a parking structure. So we've tried to be really clear, it's outside the scope of this project, but I think it's something you guys are gonna at least start to hear about from staff at some point. But we're trying to, navigate with the public, making sure that we don't get too many things mashed up into this project. All right, next slide. Okay, so the grand reveal, I have to say we are really excited. We turned over a lot of rocks, a lot of leaves. We looked at a lot of different options to how to keep the parking, figure out this loading, take what's working and keep it, take what's broken and fix it, right? But not try to, blow everything up and reinvent the wheel. So we're pretty excited about how this has come together. I'm gonna walk through a plan view version. We've got some sections, and then we've got a little walking tour that we'll take with the visuals, some of which were in your packet. So we'll start at Two Rivers in Midland. So we kind of have our entrance here, that again, you'll see in our visuals. Part of the key here is really taking this huge investment that we're now making in Basalt River Park, and make sure that we connect that. Make that the beginning of this amazing experience that people can have circulating very safely and very attractively from here into, you know, the heart of the historic portion of Midland. So you can see this idea of doing some initial gateway art. You know, maybe there's a little bit of that vocabulary all along here, and then you'll start to enter the very critical, like, pedestrian realm here at the knuckle with the Midland Spur. So Midland Spur, we'll talk a little bit about this, which is an exit from downtown. So we are going ahead with the option to turn Midland Spur into a one-way, so it will be a one-way exit from town. With that, we can reorganize the parking here so that we have angled parking and get that, you know, efficiently designed so we can actually add some parking on the spur. With this single entrance, so just reorganizing the whole triangle area, Merino Park, to this exit, we can add some parking onto Two Rivers as well, and we're able to use that triangle space now for like a multitude of layered things. So we cycle, a little bit of a bike corral for just private bikes, stormwater, so this is the end of our stormwater capture before it goes under and into the conservancy area, and then maybe some snow storage. So if we have to move some stuff without just plowing, we can do some snow storage down there as well, and it's a great spot for it. I'll go all the way up to the top now, and we'll work our way back down. So we have left in, and then this was in some of the early alternatives in the facility design, making sure to have this legal vehicle pedestrian turnaround. So it's kind of a mountable tabletop where a large truck cannot circulate, so it's not a roundabout, but it is a legal vehicle turnaround. So those of you that are familiar, up in Snowmass at the Snowmelt Base Village there, hopefully we do a few things. P&Z had some good feedback, like, fine, but make it better than Snowmass. It lacks some signage and things like that. So we will leave that here. So this really is all about, I circulate up Midland, I can't quite find a spot right where I want, I can legally turn around, circulate back down, and really having some of your further parking then is out on the Midland Spur. So Upper Midland, what we're calling this, we would pull the lanes together. So there is no center loading, and with that we can both attach a safe sidewalk as well as get angled parking up here, again reorganized, and add some parking up at the top of Midland. So that brings us kind of to our historic core. We brought the best of what we loved about the Woonerf into this project. So right here in the core, we will get rid of the curb and gutter, bring all of the street level. With that, we're also turning the stormwater around from what you have. So with this center flex lane, we'll turn the stormwater into the center of the street, be able to capture that every time it gets warm enough. In the winter, we're getting anything that's melting out into the street, into the warmth, get rid of that ice damming that's on the edge, all the edges really up against the curb and gutter. So we leave the center lane. We are now calling this a center flex lane. So the idea is all about the flexibility of it, the resiliency of it. It will not strictly be a loading lane. So it may be timed loading at particular times of the day from 4 to 8, switch it back to parking. It can have some bike parking in the center. It can be one thing once we finish this and we realize, you know, we need to kind of tweak a few things, and we're able to do that. So we're pretty excited about how that can come together. You know, as mentioned by the public, how we tweak whether there are planting islands or not, like, definitely to be determined. So we're really appreciating that feedback from the businesses. Let's go to our sections. I think these help, you know, kind of shed light on each of these areas. So this is our section for the Midland Spur. We have a 20-foot drive aisle. Again, this is exiting, so this is kind of, this car is exiting to the west. We have angled parking on either side. This would be the town hall side, so really leaving attached sidewalk there. Honestly, possibly even preserving the sidewalk that exists right now, to be determined. On this side, we will have some retainage and things like that. So we're looking at how to make sure this is all thumbs up by our EMS, and we can keep it as narrow as possible, so we'll limit the height of the retaining wall up against the parking. The next street section is, we can go to, is right through the heart of the downtown. So, you know, in places, so this is what we said, right? Like, what's here and is working, what's here and is broken. So the center lane right now, it exists, is both. So there's this aspect that's really working, and there's this aspect that's awful. So when you analyze two things primarily about the current center loading, what's happening is, one, in places it's approximately 10 feet, and some of your lanes adjacent to that in some areas are almost 9 feet. So that, you know, everything about the cross-section right now is extremely narrow. And then you have angled parking up against it. So you have people who are quite literally trapped in their parking space because of just the backing out. So, and you have these things that are working. Businesses saying, yeah, but, right, here are these things, it's great, it doesn't take up a bunch of parking on the side of the street, like, it's the flexibility that we need, you know, it's not just my Cisco truck, it's might be my manager who just needs to flip open their Suburban and get everything out. So, you know, we've just heard a lot of feedback that it's not this very, like, set and specific truck, or, right, it needs this resiliency and this flexibility. So, this is now the cross-section through this center lane. So the center lane would be 12 feet. You work your way on either side. We have a 12-foot drive aisle on either side, a 9-foot parallel parking, which meets your code. We did look at some narrower options, you know, our civil engineer was kind of encouraging, and still we heard that feedback, right? Like, we've got a lot of trucks, we've got fishermen, you know, let's kind of keep to the code. And it still works, it works great. So we've got 9 foot on either side, parallel parking. You are now able to park and leave, no matter what's happening in the center lane. It's awesome. And then either side. So on the north side, this pedestrian realm, again, varies just because the building face varies, but we've got kind of this 14 to 22 feet. So very generous pedestrian realm now, where we can do that outdoor dining, retail can spill out, and we still have very safe passage and plenty of room to get people circulating around. And then on the south side, looking at approximately that 7 feet. Now that varies just how it may move around a little and keep some of that funk that we still have. You'll notice in our sections, we kind of tried to give at least this first pass of what utilities are gonna look like. So sanitary sewer to the north, kind of in that north lane, some of which replaced, some may be maintained. We'll still be opening it up for some of the service connections. We will be replacing the water in the south lane. In this section, as I mentioned, now where we draw this WUNERF and we get this whole level plane, we will move the stormwater to the center. Look to some of these landscaped areas to actually infiltrate, treat some of that water. So kind of a combination of treatment, you know, treatment pipe, and then kind of moving that down. So by the time we put the water back into its final treatment, it's even better quality, certainly, than it is now. And then our shallow utilities pretty much run on either side of the streetscape. Next section. So this is just Upper Midland. So again, we've drawn the lanes together, a full 24-foot clear, 21-foot angled parking on either side, again, meeting code. On the north side, what we're able to do by pulling this street together is get this safe attached sidewalk, so you can now park, you're not just sort of circulating back into the street, you're onto a sidewalk and down into the streetscape. And on the south, similarly, some of which may just strictly be maintaining, right, they already have an attached sidewalk, so we'll try to maintain that and the circulation into Riverwalk. Okay, we'll do a quick, we just have a few slides that'll visual, like, walk you through things. So this is you know, I have just passed the park and turned on to Midland. So this is where we hope to kind of do, maybe just out of view here, some of the gateway art, really try to announce you've, you know, entered Midland. It may be something as simple as, you know, bringing in and more to the front the existing historic walk. You know, it may be something a little bit more, but you can see how the vocabulary is already starting to draw you in, and both sides safe walking right into downtown. Next slide. So now I'm standing right outside of Town Hall. So this is the one-way Midland Spur exit, angled parking on either side. You can see here now you've reached kind of that knuckle. So right where we reorganize this vehicular access to the Midland Spur, make sure that people cannot any longer just kind of whip down Midland and just poof, out onto the Midland Spur, slow them down. And then you can also see this is right here, this edge is where everything starts to get elevated and the curb and gutter go away. Next slide. Back there, maintaining the Midland Mall, we're just thinking like we can pull out the ditch, right, and get that replanted, but like keep this just adorable little space and the trees that are there. So we're now in front of Butch's on the left, and we're looking up Midland, Alpine Bank on the right. You can start to see in the next couple of slides this idea of this level, you know, just kind of level ground plane, and just what you don't see here is just sort of this slight tip to the center and the drainage in the middle. I think Bill at P&Z, you know, said like the whole point is really accentuate this, right? We're calling it like Uber accessibility. So now your entire streetscape, whether it's everything from turning this into like festival night, right? And then everything is just walkable, you're not trying to work around these curb and gutters, to the ability to actually consider all of your parking on the edges as accessible and universally accessible, to a certain amount of resiliency, right? So now everything turns to electric. You wanna put full electric charging on your whole streetscape. You're not working with curb and gutter, you're not trying to figure out how to, you know, is it on the curb, is it off the curb? You kind of have this whole playing field, you know, to mess around with. So there's sort of a, not just the accessibility, but this universal resiliency about this little core area. Next slide. So this is just a little bit further up, and most of what we're trying to convey here is the kind of space that we can capture. So right now, the curb is pretty much right here, just outside the posts. And then this, all of this realm here is taken up with parking. So to be able to do this, you know, keep our center loading, change to parallel parking, this is the realm that you get here with dining. All of this retail spills out. It is square footage that these businesses get to capture and do the things that Michelle was talking about, right? Get some of that increase in your sales tax without building space. Next slide. So we just went a little bit further up. So Brick Pony, Cafe Bernard. Again, you can see this is kind of that main, you know, intersection, pedestrian. So the idea is you have a lot of pedestrian permeability, but you also have the very safe pedestrian zones and your clear crosswalks. And much of that, again, related to making sure that it's safe access for everyone on those crosswalks. But you can see, again, the kind of space that can be captured now. Brick Pony is able to use this pedestrian area versus out, you know, having to get their approval for the parking spaces. Next slide. All right, so all the way up at the top, again, we're just pulling this together, a pretty standard street cross-section with angled parking, two-way, attaching the sidewalk. So this is this whole change here up against the church, and how that'll get reorganized is one of the primary benefits as we kind of change this cross-section on Upper Midland. All right, next slide. Bird's eye view. So this just gives, again, a good sense, all of this, you know, no curb and gutter, and really where we're using kind of these raised planters and all of that final design to be determined, but It may be that we're creating a safe space. Some of this might even have like a decking and there's some bike parking on it, things like that. And then a lot of these, we're really exploring how to, again, use those as at least an infiltration / rain garden type approach in the center lane. Next slide. So, very quickly, you know, a lot of this as we presented to the Midland tenants and owners was just to kind of walk through what some of these expectations would be. So this is just this basic 4-phase approach to thinking about construction, right? So you're really moving your way through the trenching and the deep utilities, you know, opening up a certain space, doing the utilities, backfilling. So you don't have a trench open, the key, right? That part of this is like, you're not opening an entire trench, you know, the whole length of Midland, right? You're doing this in sections at a time. So that's a key component. Thinking about phase 2, where you're starting to, you know, remove some of the surface, so the existing asphalt, curb and gutter, you know, as that trench work goes, you're doing those pieces and then maybe patching that back together. Phase 3, as you finish the deep utility, you're doing all the service connections and things like that. And then 4 is really this like surface, okay, you're up on top now. You pull up anything that's remaining, you're doing your shallow utilities, and then all the fun stuff. All your lamps, all your bollards, you know, all your pouring concrete. And some really great pictures, thanks to Eddie, which we appreciated. So, next slide. So the $1 million question was, and Bill, I think you asked us to make sure that we kind of looked at the parking for basically the whole core. So these numbers go from the top of Midland all the way out to the other end of Homestead, and they go from the 7-Eleven bridge, you know, to the 4-way stop. We did not do the parking spaces just down here to the south of the 4-way. So those areas, public parking only, so on-street public parking, we're not analyzing people's private lots. There are 330 existing parking spaces on Two Rivers, Midland, and Midland Spur. So the proposed parking, as we change just what we were calling kind of the 3 blocks in the historic core to parallel, but we're able to add parking on the Spur, Upper Midland, and Two Rivers. That results in 322 proposed parking spaces in that same area. And then if you take the flex lane in the center and say in the evening, you flip it back to parking, that's an additional 8 spaces. So we are at a no net loss of parking while achieving all of these project goals. So we were really excited that we could get to that point. Next slide. Thanks. So that's it. That's our website. Please, 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 as you're talking to people, and I'm sure you get lots of questions, making sure that they continue to have awareness and access to this website. It's going to be a key communication tool for us as we get into construction. So, yeah, let's talk to upsalt.net/Midland Avenue Streetscape. Michelle, did I miss anything? I guess just, yeah, what we're trying to do tonight, maybe Michelle could be really clear about what we need from you guys this evening, in addition to answering, I'm sure, lots of questions.
Sure, thanks, Heather. What I would just say is that what we're looking for tonight is direction to move forward with the general scope of the project that you've been shown. We'll be bringing back details of the design elements, you know, what kind of street lamps and such are proposed in the future. But to keep the project on schedule right now, we need to move forward with the engineering drawings for the deep utilities and the general shape of the streetscape. So we're looking for direction to move forward as is, and also to hear any comments or concerns that you want us to further investigate as we go forward.
Great. Are you up for some questions? Council,
I guess,
you guys, I got a few, but I will defer to my counselors before I launch in, but
Let's do it.
So it seems like in the middle lane, there's a lot of I mean, there's a lot of parking there, right? It's obviously a big concern. And first off, I love the direction that we're going, sort of the combination of what we looked at a couple months ago. So thank you. But in the middle lane, is there a thought maybe of like, if there's a capacity problem there, because everybody's getting their deliveries on Tuesdays and Thursdays, that there's a holding space somewhere to where
Totally.
you, like, hey, the food truck has to sit there for 20 minutes while 2 UPS guys get out of the way or whatever.
Yeah, totally. So this like whole approach right now, and I think looking at that with maximum flexibility and resiliency is exactly that. And what this allows us to do is really start to move into 30% design and then refine what that might look like out of the gate. So I was just in Telluride, they do a permit process for the center flex lane. And I kind of just got back there, so like I haven't even had that conversation with Michelle and Catherine, but like, so they do a permit process. So whether you're the Cisco truck, you quick get the permit, or you're just store manager, you can hang your permit and use that. And that could be time from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then 4 to 8, it goes to parking. You could set some permanent loading zones. You could so kind of the whole idea right now is get the cross-section and this allocation of space nailed down, and then these operational nuances we figure out so that then the design can follow that and make sure that it works for any version of that, if that makes sense.
Well, this is a cool version, so thank you.
Thanks.
Dave?
So, yeah, another center lane question. So I like the design overall. I think it's a good combination of the 3 different styles and kind of the buffet. It's a nice buffet pick. With the center lane and the planters, which I think will look really good, how is that going to work with, I'm not a truck driver, but trailers and coming in and out, and then especially in winter, it sounded like there could be time when there's ice and stuff in that middle area.
Yep.
And, what would that look like as far as kind of that truck vehicular traffic?
Yep. Yeah, and I think we're still trying to make sure that we figure that out in a way that it's successful, right? So that's where I'm not committing to those being these like glorious rain gardens, because if we're fully stacking snow in those, right, like maybe we just can't get that to work. But then could they be decked and have some bike parking and you remove the deck and store snow? Totally. So not completely figured out yet, but I think whatever input, like, oh, think about this, or this is a place where I've seen it, and it was amazing. Crested Butte, they roll out and they're somewhat temporary in the summer, right? For that exact reason. So I think still trying to make sure that we do that center lane and those very fine details as we get into 30, 60, 90, like successfully. So we hear everybody's feedback for sure.
Cool. And that makes sense. And then the other question I would have be around the mountable with campers and boats coming in and out. Like, is that how, I'm assuming you guys have thought that through, and because there's a lot of traffic with trailers again going up the frying pan.
Totally. Yep. And do you mean like around those planters or just in general?
No, like that mountable roundabout thing, and I mean,
Oh,
are people
they drive right over it.
They drive over.
Drive right
and it's
over it.
not, okay.
You're not a passenger vehicle, you're passing over it, but it's got its own purpose for that, right? So then you're also coming back down, like it's a traffic calming, it's an announcement of you just left. Hopefully you weren't speeding down the frying pan, because take your life into your own hands. But, so now you can't just fly over that, you're slowing down, you're doing all this stuff. But anything beyond a passenger vehicle actually just slowly drives over that.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Sure.
So, segging off of that, so this drainage is going to be conveyed to the interior of the street up against these landscape islands, the medians, and how's that with their just storm drain inlets, and what's the piping and what's the
Like, still to be determined. So that's why we kind of need your, like, this structure looks good and we finalize. So there, you can do it either trying to keep some where, let's say these are rain garden, you have the cut, in the curb, you're putting some of that in there, you're piping some of it, right? or we can do all just straight inlets. So we still put it to the center, but a little bit more traditional to just convey it in pipe. And then, you know, right now, I guess you're better to explain that, because you did earlier tonight, where the stormwater's going.
Oh, generally speaking, it will still come, you know, subgrade along Midland, then be routed down the spur. It'll probably get to a surface level point just due to grades at some point as it heads down the spur, and then ultimately it will follow the path as it has, which is to go towards RMI. There's a forebay where it receives some treatment
I
before
see.
heading to the river. Yeah.
So I guess the thing that would go bump in the night about this is freeze up. And, do we have a situation where these inlets freeze, get clogged, jammed, and then we get the freeze-thaw cycle and water starts backing up and ponding on the street, and then we have excellent skating on Midland Avenue. So what's the dynamic there? Is the belief that these will stay open and well-drained, and that they're adequate to prevent freeze-up and jamming and all the stuff that seems to occur out there now?
Yeah, we'll work with our civil engineering team to make sure that, it's viable for winter conditions. I think it will also take some coordination with Public Works around their snow management and how
Yeah.
that occurs. And, we do live in winter conditions and can face some serious freeze periods, but, we work actively with Public Works to vet these designs and figure out the best way to help manage that snow storage, which I think will be greatly beneficial. Michael, did you have anything to add to that?
Catherine, you did a pretty good job of summarizing it. I do think the issue with freeze and thaw is something that's been on our minds from the start. We may have to get creative with identifying storage areas for the plow drivers so that that's kind of an operational solution. And we've also, thought a little bit about, maybe some de-icing technology as well. So those are still options that are on the table. We're pretty comfortable in any other kind of precipitation scenario other than freeze thaw, that the center drainage is going to be really advantageous to the rest of the design. So a little bit left to figure out, as Catherine said, but I think there's a lot of good solutions out there that we can explore.
One of the benefits to the landscape islands, Bill, is that really you can do this with the inlets as well, right? Is you have several of those curb cuts and they can be more open. So they're you don't get that tendency to say, here, you've got this entire side of the street and you're trying to get it to, one inlet down there. And if anything fails, you're in trouble. So you have either a whole series of inlets, or if we're able to do this kind of curb cut infiltration / rain garden approach, you have a lot of different places, and so you're only conveying X amount of water to each of those. An issue here doesn't cascade literally, right, to the whole street section. So that's another strategy.
Yeah, I think we do have an advantage with those inlets. Will be out in the sun much more so than
Yep.
the curb lines that we have now that stay in the shade. And I had a question about how the milling and circulation will work, and so just bear with me here. So probably 75–80% of our auto arrivals to the town, maybe 90% all flow to the east. So they come up Tours and then onto Midland Avenue, and so then what highway engineers call the Gawk effect takes over. People start looking for the parking spot, and right now the parking spots are both sides of the street are fair game. And we've all seen it, and especially this time of year, somebody's traveling down Midland Avenue and they spot an open parking space in front of Heather's. There's a really quick U-turn right there. They'd rather get T-boned than miss the opportunity for a parking space. And that's the dynamic out there. So now we'll have parallel parking, and I appreciate the parking counts. But have you kind of thought through what that circulation's going to look like, where most of the hunters for parking spaces are going to be flowing, up the street, and the parking spaces, by and large, are going to be on the other side of the street. Is this a smooth radius turn around for these cars to to pick up a parking space on the other side of the street, or is it a three-point turn? And, you know, what's that?
Well, either one of those are illegal, so.
Wow,
So.
right.
I mean, so part of this flow is, like, that was tongue-in-cheek, but with parallel parking, the tendency for someone to do that is significantly less, right? Because they are not just making some strange whip around, totally guilty of it, please don't take it me. They're not trying to make this strange whip around and get into an angled space. So much more rarely will they try to make a movement to fully go through this center flex space and try and get into a parallel space. It's a key component of having that legal turnaround up at the top and having signage and making sure that people can circulate this side of the street. They can also come in here and circulate the Midland spur. So folks that really now are coming here more often, and, you know, I eat dinner here for sure once a week, like, they're gonna get this sense of things and just say, okay, I know I'm probably gonna try to find it up here if I can't find it right in the core, or I may just kind of go ahead and flip down Midland and find my spot. So,
Go
but,
past River, you can go all the way up to the barber shop, basically, and then
yes,
your innovative
your
turnaround
your
there,
legal
and then
turnaround
continue
is supposed to
for
be
Hunt
that.
on the other
That's
side of the
correct.
street.
Yep, and so the idea is to further and further and further discourage people from some of the stuff that you see out there right now by design, right? And getting stuck in their parking spaces because you can't get out of an angled space.
Well, I think this, and by the way, compliments, this is really good work, and I, with my fellow counselors, really love the direction we're taking here. This is gonna be a phenomenal improvement for the downtown. I think what this does, though, is tells us that we've got to double down on this elementary school parking arrangement, which physically, in terms of walking distance and visibility, there's just no reason that should not succeed other than public information and wayfinding and signage and lighting and all the stuff that it takes to get people educated about this parking opportunity. So, in the summer, we got signage and it says public parking, like the big blue P, leads people up Cottonwood Drive and into the elementary lot, and then there are big, wayfinding signs to get into the downtown. And once people learn that, I mean, a lot of people that complain are repeat customers. These are, folks that come to dinner a lot in downtown Basalt, and they can never find a spot. Once it works for them, I know this is outside the scope here, but I think it's a message to us as a town that we've really got to really work on that opportunity, because it's low-hanging fruit, and that could really, help the cause.
And sooner
or
than
take the
later,
free
if it was
What's that?
Take the free shuttle.
that too.
Yeah.
Sooner than later, because I think that parking as a strategy during construction would be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
We're looking at, just so you know, doing some improvements on that trail in the park this year yet, but then along the trail itself, Swinging Bridge, looking at trying to put that into a improvement for next summer through post.
Great. But yeah, I think it's hardwired, low voltage
Yeah.
lighting. It's not solar lights.
Yeah.
It's got to be, designed.
Remember, that was an experiment, so
I know.
it was not meant to be
I know, and
permanent.
It was wonderful. I saw those solar lights enhancing people's property all over town.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
They were really handy for people.
That's right.
But I think the plan also fixes, I don't know if you want to say a word about it, but we will end up with a continuous walkway system on the south side of Midland Avenue.
All the way from the park.
This is a big
big
deal.
deal.
This is a breakthrough for our community. So,
Yep.
kudos for fixing that. That's great.
Go ahead, you.
I'll kind of echo this is my personal deal on the center flex space. For one, this is a good design. Me personally, I'm not in favor of concrete curb and gutter and then that draining. Like, if you could make it flat, it's just gonna be easier for I mean, I plowed snow, and that would be a pain in the ass to have those curb and gutters right there, trying to get snow by it. It would, you know, I would try to avoid that. I get the plantings and the storm drain, but over time, that's gonna be a hassle. That's just my personal deal. And then the only oddball comment I have, I don't know, this probably isn't in the scope, but our band shell over here in that area, can we utilize that for, say, extra parking? Because we're gonna have everything we need across the street.
We got the ixnay from Post, so
Okay.
we've definitely thrown it out there. I would put it in you guys' court to, and staff, and, you know, if it's something you guys wanna pursue, I think,
Having two band shells within a stone's throw of each other just
Right.
seems like a waste.
Just curious, what did you throw out to post? Like, what
to,
was the
to
cost?
do it as like an overflow parking, you know, summertime overflow. You know, which could still be grass, or, you know, who knows? I think it's a tough one. And probably not just for Post, I think they might echo some of the
Yeah.
community's sentiment, just, you know, try not to pave over all of Paradise. So, I think we feel really good, you know, that we said the charge for us is, can we do all of this and not lose any parking? We pretty much knew from the beginning, just in the streetscape, we weren't gonna be doing all of this and then adding parking. So I think as you guys tick off other places to add parking, we can totally respond. We're just gonna kind of put that in another bucket for now. And that's a good spot to have the discussion.
I would also echo Glenn's statements on those curbs and the trees. I love the design. I just worry, like, I don't know, you were here for the public comment, but I feel that center lane for those restaurants and the, you know, it's so important for deliveries, and so the trees are beautiful and all that's beautiful, but I just feel like we're such a small town that our restaurants probably aren't on the priority of a Shamrock or a Cisco, and so trying to create like a set time, I think we're kind of wishful thinking in these ways of, oh, well, you're gonna get your delivery every day at, you know, between 8 to 10, and then we can switch it over and do something. So if we just leave it that great flex lane like you have it, I think will be helpful to everyone. And then I love like the walkway at the Knuckle. I just want to make sure, you know, I see a lot of textures in there and colors, and I just worry about plowing on it. And with all those indentures and how we're stamping it, or just to make sure it's extremely durable for
Sure.
the amount of beating and banging it's
Yeah,
gonna get
takes a
to
beating.
keep the roads clean. So.
Right on.
But it's an awesome plan, and it's really exciting. And then one quick question, down by the church, it looked like you guys had kind of changed that retaining wall from the wood one that's there to like a concrete one.
Right.
But still
Yep.
having the sidewalk there.
Well, so what we'll look to do is attach the sidewalk to the parking essentially,
Yep.
which means then we'll probably have to push back the retainage, you know, likely right to the edge of the right of way, and then kind of remake the connections,
Okay.
like to the church, to the homes, and, you know,
Yep.
there's a whole series of those.
So that'll be a big project.
Yeah. And then you can tell we also kind of have that, you know, some of these crossings up there as well to create, even on Upper Midland where it feels like the pedestrian gets like a little bit left out, continue to have these really safe crossings up there. Maybe even one more from what you see here.
That's awesome, thank you.
Well, good work. So what are we looking for here tonight? You need authorization to go to schematic design or to?
Yeah, yep. So we would move into what's called the Phase 3 project design. So, and again, it doesn't mean you guys don't see, like, you continue to see this 30, 60, 90, where we finalize, like, are there really planters in the middle or are there not? But kind of the stake in the ground that says, we're good with this parking strategy change, you know, we're good with the framework of this surface cross-section that we showed. with all of these comments in place, you know, go forth into 30%. You can imagine if we get a little further down the road and then we get squeamish about, you know, the parallel parking or the center loading or something else, we back up a lot. So,
Inland spur can't be two ways. I
it-
just wonder about the people who live across the street.
I think they've been asking
yeah,
for it to be, like, slow down. That's sort of the general sentiment that I've heard over the years is like the speeding. So I think if you have it one way, I think that helps to control that. Plus, of course, the entry in there. So it would be a little more inconvenient for them, admittedly, but
most have been in support, though. Most have been ones that brought it up. Residents, CCs, they're like all thumbs up, because it's just, now it's not this, it's a little bit of a raceway.
Yep.
You're leaving town, you're coming in, you're trying to cut off the four-way, like, you name it. So, yeah, so it could, but this allows us the most added parking.
So Heather, will this next phase of work lead to a pricing set, or is there another step before you, Heather?
Yeah.
Is this next iteration going to be the basis for pricing?
That's right. We've already started working through some very conceptual pricing just to make sure we're on the right track with Suitsman, Gerbaz, and these guys. But when we come back to you at the 30, 60, 90 level, part of their contract is to provide, you know, pricing that, you know, has the equivalent accuracy to the accuracy of the design, of course. But they're in it for the long haul with us, helping with pricing along the way, so that we can make sure we're staying on track.
So we've already priced enough, right? They already took kind of that first pass at deep utilities and priced the 3 alternatives for the surface enough that, like, we're feeling good, very good, that we present this in, you know, full speed ahead, pricing wise.
All right.
David's got
How do we want to go about this? Do we want to?
David has a question.
One quick question, just back in the presentation. This may be a Michelle question. How strong from the survey was the desire for need for parking enforcement, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, the desire for parking enforcement was strong. And it's been an interesting conversation, because on the same level, there's discussion about knowing that they themselves are parking in front of their businesses or their employees are. So that is an issue.
Okay, thanks. And not obviously solved tonight, but just was curious about that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Do we just go thumbs up?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if we were looking for any sort of motion, but it certainly would be okay, you know, a motion to proceed and request to review comments provided by council, something simple like that.
yeah, we don't have a reso or
No.
any formal action, so I would just entertain a motion to authorize staff to proceed with the general design concepts that have been presented to council tonight, and sally forth.
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One abstention.
That was just due to a conflict issue. We weren't expecting formal action, so
Yeah.
it was all fine for participation.
Thank you. Good work, guys. This is exciting stuff. I look forward to it.
Nice job.
Can you have it? Can you get it done by next summer?
Come on, Shirley.
It's those guys. Just gonna hang it on.
So, thank you for that. Our next order of business are council actions, the first of which is a continued public hearing and first reading on ordinance number 16, series of 2022. This is an ordinance of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving amendments to the municipal code, amending town section 18-23, sustainable building regulations. Sarah?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good to see you.
So, as you know, I'm Sarah Nadolny with the town's planning department, and I have here Jeff Dickinson and Amanda Poindexter. They are our subject matter experts, as well as members of the Basalt Green Team's Green Codes Committee. And so this evening, we're here to present some proposed code changes to Chapter 18 of the town's municipal code, with a keen focus on the sustainable building regulations, and for your consideration at first reading. And as if you remember, or some of you will remember, late last year, or about a year ago actually, the committee, members of this committee did meet with the town council in a work session to discuss the town's climate action goals and some proposed amendments, and the town gave a green light, town council rather, gave a green light at that time to propose or pursue updates to the sustainable building regulations. So we are a year later bringing those here today for discussion. The purpose is to move the town towards making progress in its climate action goals and to pursue topics like beneficial electrification. So as you know, each greenhouse gas emissions inventory that the town has received since 2014 has shown buildings to be Basalt's greatest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And the proposed code amendments will target both new construction as well as remodels that meet a certain threshold, and will really get at those, push forward our climate action goals even further. So I'm going to hand it over to Amanda in just a moment to provide an overview of these changes. We're also asking the town council to consider a roadmap to net zero that would outline the steps that the town would take to get to net zero development by 2031. And the council would be asked to consider that roadmap via a draft resolution that's been included in the town's council's packet for consideration. And if so desired, that could be adopted at second reading. So I'll hand it over to Amanda, and then I can get into the engagement that we've had with public outreach over the last few weeks. And Amanda, you'll have to ask James to forward the slides. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so here we go. Here's just an overview of this 2022 amendment. James, if you, basically, to be net zero, we have to transition to net zero, and that's basically building a building that's gonna use the same or less energy that it will produce. So not only is this, you know, having the on-site renewables, but it's having a good building envelope, efficient systems and appliances, you know, good operations and maintenance. And, you know, if we can add the on-site renewables and storage, that will also add resiliency from power outages. Next one. Also, better buildings are not only more efficient and more comfortable to occupy, but as you can see, and as Sarah has mentioned before, they contribute greatly to the town's greenhouse gas emissions. They take up 60% of all of the emissions from the 2014 inventory. And as you can see on our graph here, our greenhouse gas emissions, we have committed to reducing our emissions 25% below those levels by 2025 and 80% by 2050. Our emissions actually increased in 2020, so we have some work to do. This graph here is a graph from the 2020 greenhouse gas inventory that was done by Lotus Engineering. As you can see, we definitely need to eliminate our electrical use and reduce our natural gas, as well as, you know, the other usages here. But if we're able to produce our electrical by on-site renewables and reduce our natural gas, we can come close to, you know, we can definitely meet our 2025 goal, and we can get closer to that 2050 goal. So here is our map to net zero that we are proposing, and it's basically ramping up efficiency levels every 3 years. This was pretty close to what was proposed to you guys back in December. And just for your reference, for some existing buildings, The 525 Basalt, that Lamb building, they have solar on their entire roof, and they have a 50% offset. The Skiko housing, the workforce housing in Willits, they also are utilizing all of the roof space that they can, and they have a 60% offset. For this ordinance, some key updates and changes. We're gonna clean up the SBRs a little bit. It basically clears up some verbiage and takes out some conflicting language and adds more opportunities for points. A large section of this amendment is geared towards beneficial electrification and storage, making a transition to an all-electric project seamless in the near future. These following definitions are defined in the ordinance and include being electric-ready, battery-ready, EV-ready for residential, and requiring EV charging for commercial.
Amanda, can you tell us what SBRs are for the public's sake as well?
Yep, SBRs are these sustainable building regulations, and it is the town of Basalt's above code requirements for all buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Well, all buildings that it would trigger. We are also requiring HERS ratings for houses 2,000 square feet and over. I'll get into the HERS ratings a little bit later in the presentation, but it's basically a home energy rating for your home. We're also re-looking at the rent fees and adding fees for exterior energy usage, such as exterior gas pits and exterior heaters. We also have compiled a REMP calculator spreadsheet that will make it easy for all parties to easily enter in the kind of exterior energy use they're trying to use, and it'll calculate the offset or fee. And it's very similar to what's utilized in the city of Aspen and Pickens County right now. We're also trying to get the existing buildings to be more energy efficient, and the easiest and most bang for your buck is making those buildings more airtight. So encouraging and requiring energy assessments and getting blower door tests before and after construction. And we're also, in this amendment, the 2021 IECC will not yet be adopted, but we are gonna require that the mandatory requirements are a part of this. And we will look into adopting the 2021 IECC with the rest of the 2021 building codes at the end of this year, by the end of the year. Basically, we're trying to get more in line with our neighbors. We have some neighbors that are doing some really neat things. And as you can see here, this is a list of municipalities that not only require the HERS ratings for residential, but there's some that are requiring all the solar. And you may or may not know that Crested Butte just pledged to be all electric by, coming January of 2023. So this is what we're pushing for. Basically, having the renewables to help power, the items in your home. So we would be requiring 3 watts a square foot for a mixed-use home, and that's utilizing gas and electric. If you are all electric, that requirement is lowered to 2 watts a square foot. And same thing with the commercial, it'd be 25% of your annual energy usage, but it's 15% if that building is all electric. And being electric ready is basically being able to fuel swap, any of the space heating and cooling, your water heating, your dryer, having a infrastructure and plug ready for those. And also being battery ready, so having a sufficient physical space for these batteries and the necessary electrical infrastructure to accommodate this storage system, and also the EV ready aspect. So real quick, a HERS rating is a home energy rating system. It is the industry standard for measuring a home's energy efficiency. It's much like the mile per gallon for your car, except that the smaller number means less money is spent on utility bills. The range is from 0 to 150. The level 100 is based on a standard code-built 2006 home. This ordinance would require a HERS score of 60 before any renewables are applied to really get a good envelope and mechanical systems implemented, and then requiring the HERS 40 and 45 after the renewables. Oh, and also note, if the home is less than 2,000 square feet, you can comply just using a res check. So these code amendments are a key step for Basalt in our roadmap to net zero. And we are actively working with the building community and gaining their input on the proposed code amendments. We pushed the second reading to September 13th to allow for the maximum public input. Any questions?
Can you explain that chart? Right there, monthly utility bills, HERS rating, Denver.
Oh, sure. So this is just HERS ratings of certain homes in areas kind of similar to Basalt, and just how much they're saving on their annual utility bills, and then over the time of the mortgage, that's, showing a pretty substantial amount saved.
And these municipalities use the same proposal that you're presenting?
Yes,
And are these new construction or just remodel?
new construction.
Amanda, I'm intrigued by the on-site renewable feature, which is very sensible, pretty neat. Is this applied at the time of issuance of the building permit, or is this a condition that's applied to new developments, or is this basically part of our UBC or, our
So it's
whatever,
required for all new construction, and it would be required for a very extensive remodel.
So it's a building permit, basically.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to think through here is, and it's totally admirable, it'd be great if we could achieve it, just as a practical matter, I'm wondering, so 3 watts per square foot is the theory, so that's, basically the theory is that we're mitigating for 25% of likely energy consumption on the electrical energy consumption. So, somebody acquires a lot, the lot is in a leafy lane, so it's got plenty of trees, and we come out with the big globe and determine that PV panels are not gonna work on this site because it's too shaded. What options does that owner have if it's not feasible to generate solar? And certainly wind's not gonna be an option, but what is there a cash in lieu feature, or is there, how do we
Sure.
skin this?
Yep, so there is a payment in lieu, and basically we would get, an approved third party to verify that, yes, your site does not get that much solar gain. We don't wanna just cut down trees so we can get solar gain. So you're allowed to pay a fee in lieu, for that amount of solar.
Can you offset it by buying into a co-op or
And you could offset it, yeah, so, you could purchase that offsite.
But the direction is to have it on site. So the further you go away from your house, the more of a penalty you have to pay. So if you're buying a solar farm out of the area, then you're gonna have to pay additional, provide additional solar, is the intent.
But do you have the option of like heat pumps or some of the other technologies that are out there? Or you just?
Well, we're definitely encouraging that, but that's outside of the renewable aspect.
So
but
the rent fee you could not do some of these other technologies in order to,
Offset your solar use is what she's saying, right?
right.
You could reduce, I mean, it's gonna help you with the HERS score, but basically we're trying to get you to have the minimum 3 watts a square foot or 2 watts a square foot if you're all electric. And if it is a very efficient building, say it's, you know, a house version of the Rocky Mountain Institute, and you want to prove that, you know, you can produce 25% of that usage, and that's calculated, then you can do that offset instead of the 3 watts a square foot, if that makes sense. Like if you already know, if you've had energy modeling and you know that building's very efficient, it's going to be less than 3 watts a square foot.
I'm not following.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm confused.
Yes.
Basically, I think what we're trying to get at is like, I don't wanna see somebody penalized because they buy a lot that is shade.
Right.
So, just to have an arbitrary fee because they can't, solar panels don't work, is there a way around that by creating efficiency in the home? I mean, I read through this, but it's a lot of material.
It's a lot of material.
to digest.
So the easiest way is just to purchase that offsite, and it's easier to do that with Holy Cross than it is with Excel, but they both offer those opportunities to purchase it offsite.
But it sounded like you were saying that if, like, let's say I have a home and I can't do solar, and so I purchase offsets, I'm still paying a fee. That's what I heard you say. Less of a
Correct.
fee, but I'm still paying a fee. So I'm still being
Well,
penalized.
it's a surcharge on the monthly bill. Right? I think that's how that works with
So I guess what I don't understand is like, if this is modeled after the Aspen REMP, why you can't use other alternative technologies? Why are we stuck on solar? I mean, solar's a great technology, but what happens if something accelerates past solar and we have this other great technology? Now we're like making people do solar.
So REMP is totally separate than the on-site renewables, and I guess you can get the on-site renewables, you know, somewhere else, but REMP is only for your exterior energy uses. And that will account for all of, you know, ground source, wind, solar, and you could do other options for
So if somebody
on-site.
couldn't do solar, does the battery packs count?
Well, you still need to produce the energy somehow. So we've used solar because it's the most readily available and cost-effective right now. I mean, if somebody wanted to put up a wind generator on their house, it would be the equivalent of 3 watts per square foot of solar. So we're saying, yes, you can do it if you can prove that it's equivalent. Some other technology, like if you do a ground source heat pump or something like that, or
So let's just compare apples to hopefully apples. So we have homeowner A and homeowner B. Homeowner A has a sunny site and can take advantage of a full south-facing roof and can easily meet the standard of 3 watts per square foot. He's building a 2,000 square foot lot, so he's got 6 kW he's got to generate from his solar array. Done. His neighbor's got, 100-foot Lombardy poplars that shade the roof, and he has no options. So he can go to Holy Cross and say, okay, the cost of installation for the solar array to meet the 3 watt per square foot is $10,000. So I'm going to pay Holy Cross Electric $10,000, and is that $10,000 then go to purchase a renewable energy, either wind or solar or some form of renewable energy, and does that owner get some fair return on that purchase? So in the case of A, owner A is generating electricity and he's putting it back on the grid and being paid 3 cents per kilowatt hour, so he's actually making a little money on his solar. This other guy's just paying a penalty, or is he going to get a return on his purchase of the renewable energy from Holy Cross? Or is it just a fine?
well, you can get, so if you pay into one of the Holy Cross programs, that reduces your utility bill, right? So it does come that way. Right. There's also, if you don't go for that option, you can just pay the fee in lieu. I don't want to do any of this.
Building off of Glenn's comment, we don't
Right.
want it to be simply
Right.
punitive.
Yeah.
because
Right.
you guys
But
got
it
to- we don't want to
encourages-
create incentive for people to start cutting trees down.
Right.
So are we now dictating a little bit what the roof line of somebody's home design is in order to have the best aspect for solar? Because that's
We're
what it sounds
encouraging
like.
it.
Excuse me?
Oh, it's encouraged.
Well, it's interesting what's happened with using the solar grid-tied systems. I mean, you'll see a lot of systems now that face west, because on an annual basis, they produce, it's like 93% of the energy of a true, perfectly oriented solar system. So it doesn't mean we have to have a bunch of big south-facing roofs. Just having solar on them on an annual, when you look at it annually, and we get most of the sun in the summer, right? So it does allow for that.
So do we have pretty good anecdotal evidence that this is working elsewhere? Do we have localities that have this on-site?
Carbondale's had the 3 watts per square foot on-site for a number of years. I'd say half a dozen at least. And people, there's a fee in lieu program, and it's been, I think, somewhere north of 95% of the homes have just gone ahead and put on the solar because it's been
working
so
well.
cost-effective.
Okay.
And Carbondale's in the process of upping that number at this time.
All right.
And so you said this was only for new building and large remodels?
There are triggers throughout the whole SBRs as to when it's going to kind of tipping points, you know, and so if you're doing, you know, a simple, I mean, if you're replacing, I don't know, a wall or kicking your wall at 2 feet, you're not going to have to come into compliance with every single one of these things. So there's a point system with our sustainable building regulations. This adds additional ways to get points, basically.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, you know, if somebody has a roof line that is not amenable to solar, not necessarily because it's shaded, but like they just don't have a good roof line for solar. And so I should give you a background and say that I worked with NREL to do a solar analysis of the city of Boulder. So we had LiDAR, we provided to them, they ran an algorithm, and basically there was a certain number of square footage that they had to detract because it was not amenable. It didn't have a good aspect, it didn't have a good slope, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have a home that doesn't have this, I'm trying to understand like what is, so now, are they throwing on solar just to meet this requirement?
Well,
That's what I'm hearing.
the goal is to let people know this ahead of time and encourage design that does allow for the installation of solar panels.
Well, and that's fine for new construction, that's why I was asking the question
Right.
about existing.
Right.
But, I mean, but then it also does dictate somebody's, like, architecture plans too, so, I guess,
To a certain extent, yes, I would say.
But it just helps you take advantage of, orientation is what, like, the easiest thing you could take advantage of on an open on a new site.
well, not necessarily, like, think about the new sites at, like, Stotts Mill that are like those long skinny and you don't, you know, that's all you got.
Are we gonna open the public hearing?
So, if I may, I'd like to just take a
Sorry.
crack at synopsizing this thing, because it's a pretty unwieldy kind of conversation, but there are 5 major components to this code amendment. One is on-site renewable mitigation, which we just heard about, and sounds like we're going the right direction there. The beneficial electrification and storage, we've been talking about that for years. That's getting electric ready, right? Having panels and the electrical infrastructure capable of accepting battery storage, and that's totally sensible. The home energy rating system, HERS, not to put words in your mouth, but that's just coming current with the rest of the world here, having a HERS system in place, right? That's becoming pretty standard, would you say?
Yes, it's in the building code
So
under a
these are
different name.
leading questions.
but-
I'm like a lawyer here. Wouldn't you say that? So then exterior energy, could you talk just a smidge about that? What is that item about?
Pools, saunas, driveway heat,
Okay,
external fireplaces.
got it.
Yep.
Okay, and then existing buildings and alterations. Okay, so,
And RUMP is nothing new. That's something we already have and have had in place for many years. It's just
We're
the way
seeing
we're
more
looking
of
at
it.
it. Pardon?
Oh, we're seeing more of it.
Yep.
And we've been working closely with Resource Engineering Group out of Crested Butte, who's been the leader in the state, in the region, writing a lot of the REMP codes, and they did the calculator, the spreadsheet that Amanda referred to, and seeing that how much energy is actually used by exterior fireplaces. Heat tape uses a ton of energy, and then gas outdoor heaters, a lot, with COVID, we saw a lot more use for those things, and so we're just trying to tackle the full picture of residential energy use and commercial.
Admirable.
Can I ask a quick question, just briefly? Have you run into any issues when you're looking at solar installation and or heat pumps and retrofitting homes? So this is kind of for existing homes. If they were to trigger because they're doing a big renovation, are there, does the HOA control for allowing either solar or heat pump? Can they say, well, we don't allow that in here? And thereby it kind of runs, crossways with what these rules that we're putting in place would be. And I think I know the answer for solar, but I'm not so sure about
Heat pump is just, if you have an exterior air conditioning unit, you have a condenser outside.
Right.
It's just the same as that, so.
But a lot of people don't if it's like for heat, I guess I would say, and then all of a sudden they need to put something outside and you're creating exterior noise that wasn't there before within an HOA. Have you?
So planning has requirements on noise levels and height restrictions and stuff. I know James has dealt with that in the past, but
Yeah.
I haven't heard of any HOAs that aren't allowing them period.
Yeah.
We had, at Valley Pines, we had somebody put one in and we had to dictate, here's where it's gonna go, here's how it's gonna be installed, and all that kind of stuff. Because there is ducting that goes on the outside, it's not aesthetically pleasing sometimes. Valley Pines also talked to Holy Cross about, because we're gonna have to replace our roof within the next 5 years, talked to them about solar, and they said that it was a waste of our time.
Have we submitted this for any peer review or contractor, builders, in the trades, electricians?
This has been, we've made this available as materials over the past few weeks to literally hundreds of contractors in this valley. We've advertised in the paper, we put it on our website. Amanda created a summary video that we sent along with a written summary. And I have sent, upon request, I have sent the chunk of code amendments out to various contractors who are interested. We are starting to get, some questions here and there. We're kind of sifting through that material now. Hasn't been a lot yet, but I do know that I was contacted by one of our local architects who's just said, I'm interested, I'm still reading through it. Complimented some things, who said he might have some questions with others, but still looking for information. So that's why we were suggesting maintaining that, keeping the public outreach and education going on this for a while, making sure we have some understanding on it. We were suggesting that council adopt this upon first reading and then set the schedule of the second reading for September 13th. If you so desire, that could give some time for the public and contractors to work through this information a little bit more. But we're open to suggestion, of course, on that.
You said September what?
September 13th. It'd be the first meeting in September, and I think that's the 13th. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on me, so.
And when are we voting on the 2021 IECC?
Well, we don't have that up yet. Now, I know it's before the end of the year is the goal to bring that, and I believe that would probably be building department itself bringing that forward. But we don't have a date scheduled at this point that I am aware of.
For the rest of the council's knowledge, obviously, Sarah, this is a big push of the Eagle County Climate Action Collaborative. There is a codes cohort that's working to push out the 2021 IECC, so that's why I'm asking these questions. And then relatedly, is there anything in these code amendments that we're talking about that is already inherently in the 2021 IECC, just out of curiosity?
Yep. So all the mandatory requirements of the 2021 IUCC are added into this.
Oh, so we pulled it preemptively into this.
Yes.
Jeff, then.
Sure. Just to follow up on Ryan's question, so Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, which applies to homes that might be within a common interest community, so if you have an HOA, it says you can't effectively prohibit renewable energy devices. And I wasn't sure, there's not a definition for that in Kiowa, but I did just look it up, and it really just applies to solar and wind. It doesn't apply to those heat pumps. So, like, thank you for all this. This is really interesting. Notwithstanding all the trade-offs and dependencies, could we go faster? Like, I think I saw every 3 years we change, and that's cool. That's progress is great, but given we're behind, other municipalities are behind, countries behind, states, you know, we're in the hole. It seems like we should have a maximalist sense of urgency about this in order to, you know, do what we can. It's great, federal government, whatever, they're on the brink of actually getting something done. That's awesome. But can we go faster? Could we do this every 2 years? Is that possible?
One thing that I do hear, and maybe you guys can speak to it on the building side, is sometimes there are not vendors to install the equipment that might help to speed that up. And so I think industry is in part catching up with you know, the desire to speed it up. So I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit, but I keep.
But can we roadmap it at least? I mean, if we're talking like 10 years out, I mean, I don't see how we could make the call that they're not going to be ready from a enablement and training perspective. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like if we build it, will they come? You know what I mean? If we set the stage, like, this is how it has to be because that's the situation we're in, will they figure it out?
I'll say I was on a,
So at least with respect to the international building codes, those get updated every 3 years. And a lot of times, and I'll let you guys speak to this, but we adopt those with local amendments, and sometimes it takes a little bit of vetting and some more thinking about, all right, well, what parts of this don't make sense for our community? Is our building community going to be able to build for? And I don't know, that's been my experience dealing with international building codes, but if you guys have any comments on that. So to your point, like, sure, there's all this other stuff, but at least with the international codes, it's hard to be like, all right, January 1, we're getting this, you know, these codes adopted because we may not have all the information we need to do that on a 3-year cycle. Okay, that's fair, but I mean, if we could be aspirationally try to go as quickly as we can with, you know, the dependencies and trade-offs, like, 'cause I get that, right? But
It does feel like at moments that you know, you're like, hey, per 20 parking spots, there's gonna be, what, 2 electric charging stations? And if that seems to be the flow that people are going, what percentage is that? It's 100, it would seem, to me. And that's just a feeling, you know, with everybody buying it, not everybody, I understand, but like, you know, the direction things are going, and we're gonna have two electric EV spots per 20, just seems weird. It seems we could do better.
But relative to the on-site renewable, just a great personal sacrifice. We went to Hawaii this spring just to check it out.
Research
We were over there
project.
for a while. But driving around, we found that there were very few, almost no, single-family residences did not have extensive solar arrays on the roof. And so they were achieving 50 to 75% electrical mitigation basically on site. Of course, Hawaiian Sun, all that. And it got to the point where their electrical utility, their co-op, was really getting panicked because, you know, they don't have any electricity to sell. It's pretty interesting. This is on the island of Maui, so.
Right.
Talk to the town manager about a budget to get over there and check that out.
Should I'll take a trip there probably and research that. I think Amanda and I can lead that trip. I think they did mandate mandatory solar hot water in Hawaii too, partly because the fuel costs are so high, and it just made so much sense to do it there. So I've heard of that.
Right.
Could you imagine like a ballpark of general cost of this to someone doing, you know, obviously it's scaled on remodel, new build, but is there like, my biggest worry on stuff like this, I have solar, I have batteries, I'm all for it, but I also worry that for an older homeowner in Basalt that, you know, doesn't have the Aspen money, doesn't have, I don't wanna price out someone from doing something at their house with a green building thing that, you know, maybe they don't agree with. Obviously they can pay the fees in lieu and stuff, but I just, that's my biggest worry with the no, you know, the second thing about, you know, the roadmap to no gas. I get where we're going with it, but, you know, I still think it does have a value in our society of, you know, I don't know how well a heat pump does snow melt. Not that we need snow melt, but some people's driveways are too steep for probably an electric system in all reality. And so how can we balance, you know, the carrot or the stick? And
Would it be helpful to bring back at second reading some anecdotal type of information of like, or example information? So say, you know, person A does this and this to their home, and this is what that would look like. I mean, if that could be more helpful in informing.
yeah, even if in some of the, you know, there's definitely some houses we've approved that either was a new build or remodel or has an ADU, and you could say, hey, this project would have maybe cost this guy an extra $20,000 or $30,000, you know, just so we can have a certain number to what we are.
Or a percent increase on a new build or something.
Exactly.
I think we could do that.
As long as it's okay to look at it over 20 years. Because that's when, the chart that Amanda put up, you know, for those HERS ratings, they're paying, you know, $20 a year in utilities, or, you know, so there's you know, you have to look at it on the whole, like the life cycle of the mortgage a little bit too.
Correct.
So.
I'm fine with that.
Definitely cool with that, you know.
But it's still out of pocket up front.
$30,000, but over a 20 years period, this is what your costs are gonna be, and compare them just apples to apples.
Right.
Because then people see it and they're like, might get more behind it.
And one thing that I heard, Ryan, when you were talking with, you know, folks in town that might own a place, and, you know, is this gonna trigger a lot of extra expense? My understanding is it's only gonna trigger with a significant remodel. So if somebody just intends to stay in their house and they're doing general upkeep, they might replace a window, or they might, you know, whatever, do, you know, minor stuff, not a significant renovation, then they would not be triggering these new regulations.
Correct.
Is that a yes?
It's a much softer lift.
So they would, you know, it would be, say it's replacing like for like, you're totally exempt from all of this. If you're doing, changing windows and stuff, again, like for like.
Except to code.
But you have to bring them back up to code, so those windows are now better windows.
Yep.
And they're air sealed and whatnot. And then you're not, you know, but you're not tied to the renewables or the beneficial electrification part of it until you're doing like a gut remodel.
Yeah.
Do you know if you can incorporate the, into the construction loan, the renewables?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, to Ryan's point, my other concern is, and you said the trigger's 2,000 square feet? Is that correct?
For commercial.
So what's for residential?
It'd be 500.
Okay, so basically,
Remodels.
my other concern
For the remodels.
is we don't want to discourage anybody who's, you know, who's trying to build affordable housing.
Or an ADU, or there's just.
Yeah.
New affordables, under 2, right?
Yeah.
So new residential construction is under 2,000.
Right.
So she was referring to remodels.
Yep.
So we've specifically looked at affordable housing and said, well, if you're under that threshold, you don't have to meet certain requirements, so.
So an ADU is not gonna hit that 2,000 mark most of the time.
But any affordable housing is, you're not doing it by each individual unit, wouldn't you be doing it by the scope of the project? So like if I'm building
It'd be by each unit. So Basalt Vista, you know, it's each unit, they were about, you know, 1,300 to 1,600 square feet.
okay. So it was, okay.
And we want them to do the renewables, but we also need affordable housing, so we gotta find the balance where we're not discouraging it.
So in the interest of moving us along, so we'll put this forward for a motion here in a minute, but you'll be back on the 23rd or later, whenever you're ready.
September 13th. I'll make it that way.
Okay, I mean, basically the motion is drafted says August 23rd, but we're talking later than that now?
They wanted September 13th.
Okay,
To just get more public input.
so.
We gotta do a public hearing first.
Okay, so in the motion, I think maybe we should mention that we want to hear some peer review or some commentary from the contractor industry and home builder
Are you gonna continue?
community to comment on the ordinance.
I'm gonna move that.
Okay.
And were there others
okay.
that we wanted to see more info on?
13th of September.
I don't think so.
Okay, so with that, then I would entertain a motion.
You gotta do that public hearing.
Yeah.
Right, first reading, and it is a public hearing, that's right. Okay, so I will open this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience or calling in virtually that would like to comment on ordinance number 16, 2022, building code amendments?
Yes.
We do have a hand up.
Okay.
Daleen, you're on with the town council for comments?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you speak up a little, Daleen?
Okay, yeah, sorry, this
There
is
we go.
Daleen Barton. I'm general manager for Skip's Farm to Market. I think most of you know me. I just wanted to comment about the work and the difficulties that we've had with these codes and the sustainability codes that they are as they are now, so that you guys are made aware moving forward when you make decisions on updating the code. As you know, we're expanding from 11A on 227 Midland Avenue into 12A, and we submitted our building permit application quite a while ago, and we ran into some issues with the sustainability part. So I just want to urge the council to make sure that they research the codes in section C403 per C103 for sustainability in regard to appliances and electricity use and BTUs. We found through the building permit application that some requirements for food service appliances, such as open air coolers and deli display coolers, do not meet the code requirements because manufacturers don't yet make the equipment in the United States, or really in a lot of countries, only in Europe. And the cost to purchase a small deli cooler in the United States is around $3,000 to $5,000, where in Europe it's about, to have it shipped here and made, is about $37,000. In regard to the SBR checklist, there's a suggestion to use recycled or reused materials. And we wanted to do this with simple track lighting and matching the existing lighting that we already had, and use some other appliances that were previously used, but they don't meet the requirements for energy consumption and output. So that doesn't really make sense. I feel like some of the requirements are a cart before the horse. Some of you guys brought up that some of the manufacturers or vendors or people that can install these things don't actually exist yet. So I think we need to take that into consideration. Amanda and Mitch Miller did work with us to allow some things to slide because they don't exist. But in the time it took to get the permit, due to these issues, put us in a situation in which we've lost money at the business because it just took so long. We were expecting to hopefully have our new HVAC and AC already installed, but we haven't, and our AC has failed several times over the summer. And we lost money because we lost inventory, and it made some of our coolers that were existing already fail. And we ended up having to pay our architect an additional $2,300 to redo all of the electrical drawings because of these codes. I just wanted to put that out there so that you guys know and that you're aware that some of these things are making it prohibitive for some small businesses to comply and get where they need to go. And in regard to let me see, hold on, I'm reading my notes. Where is it? The part where at the end where you have to go through your whole, maybe Amanda could help me out here. Where is it? The SBR checklist at the end. She said that it was fine, you know, that we only met 10 of the points. Well, there's 20 points that have to be met right now, and that it's okay, you know, that we could be penalized if we don't meet them, but, you know, these things aren't in a small business's budget. And so I just want you guys to take all of that into consideration.
Okay, Daleen, we're gonna have to refer this to our staff. This is, you know, these guys are gonna have to work with you on this, but it would be useful to hear back what the resolution of this matter was, you know, when we come back, second reading. So this is just our first reading. We're gonna come back at this again, when?
Well, we have it planned for September 13th. It's the first meeting
Okay.
in September.
September 13, so, we'll be taking this back up again.
Wouldn't that, we're not even.
Something that Daleen said triggered a thought that I had earlier and I didn't follow through with, which is to say, I would love for there to be an exception process. I don't want everybody to think that they can do that, but we found that to be necessary in Boulder when we did the universal zero waste ordinance. There's always gonna be some certain circumstances where you just can't comply for one reason or another, so.
Yeah, just take a look at that. Are there standard provisions for hardship or special exceptions or, you know, whatever?
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to just say one more thing. I think that it would be, when you're putting in something new, implementing like this, like maybe it would be wonderful to have some sort of liaison that helps people to navigate this,
Yeah.
because the contractor couldn't navigate it
right.
and the architect couldn't, and I really can't. I don't know how to do this stuff. So I think that would be helpful.
That's well taken, and I think we're very sympathetic to that recommendation.
Ready for the motion?
Okay, ready for the motion.
Mayor, I move that the town council continue ordinance number 16, series of 2022, and set the public hearing and second reading. I should actually be, yes, set the public hearing and first reading for September 13th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Okay, let's begin with Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
So we'll see you guys soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for answering all our questions.
I was just kidding about Maui. You don't have to go there.
No.
Shoot. Despicable hellhole. Next order of business, this is continued public hearing, second reading of ordinance number 18, series of 2022. Ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting subdivision and PUD final plan approval and associated development review actions to construct 155 dwelling units on parcel 5 of the Cypress Meadows subdivision PUD. Possum Co. LLC applicant James Lint presiding.
We do have the applicants here with us this evening, Michael Lipkin, Jeff Orsolak, and J. Ray Barlow. As the mayor indicated, this is a continued public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would approve of the Cypress Meadows Parcel 5 final subdivision and PUD plan application to construct 155 dwelling units on Parcel 5 of the Cypress Meadows PUD. This evening, staff once again would suggest hearing a brief update on the project discussion items since the preliminary plan, as well as taking applicant comments and public comments because it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion on the draft ordinance. To begin, just a brief recap. I know council has heard this quite a few times, but it's for everybody online here. The parcel is a 12.2 acre parcel. It's parcel 5 of Cypress Meadows. It's located between the Willits Lakeside Townhomes and Willits Lake to the east, and then also the Willits Lane to the west. It's also located between the Park Modern development to the north and the Basalt Industrial Park to the south. The applicant is proposing, as has been described in past meetings, 155 dwelling units over 9 buildings. There's 7 free market buildings that are proposed and 2 deed restricted buildings. And of the project, 46 of the 155 dwelling units are proposed to be deed restricted. As part of the application, the applicants are also proposing to finish the lake by regrading the bottom of the lake, as well as constructing the rest of the trail around the lake. Currently, the trail ends here and in this area. The applicants have proposed 3 road connections, one to Evans Road up here to the north, a full access to Willits Lane on the west side, and then they're proposing to connect over to East Valley Road on the east side of the project. In addition, they propose to provide a playground area to be maintained by the HOA. The review process, as has been outlined for council in prior meetings, is a 3-step PUD process. The applicants received sketch plan as well as preliminary plan approvals previously, and we're in the final plan review as part of this hearing. This evening, staff would like to briefly go over a couple of discussion items just to give updates. They're similar updates to which council received at first reading, those being the discussion items of affordable housing, community benefits, access, as well as vested rights. On the affordable housing component, the applicant upped their number of deed restricted units as part of the preliminary plan from 44 to 46. And they're also proposing a 0.75 real estate transfer assessment for affordable housing, plus a 0.25% real estate transfer assessment for public transportation funding, in addition to the 1% real estate transfer assessment that was required by the Sopris Meadows PUD, for a total of a 2% real estate transfer assessment. As I noted at the preliminary plan phases, council provided direction for the applicants to look at making a portion of their affordable housing a for sale product. And in response, the applicants proposed to make all 46 units a for sale product that would propose to serve the missing middle class up to individuals and families making 250% of AMI. The Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC, reviewed that application and revision and was not supportive of it. And BAC asked to have a meeting with the council to discuss the goals for affordable housing on the project. And so council met with BAC earlier as part of the final plan review. BAC desired a portion of the units to be deed restricted as Category 2 units to meet the mitigation requirements in the town code. And council desired having the for sale product. So the applicants came back and said that they would do the Category 2 rental as part of the second building of affordable housing to be built, as long as they could do the deed restricted category missing middle housing as part of the first building to be built. The way the ordinance is set up, it allows for the applicant to do the missing middle building of 23 units first, which would come along with the third free market building, and then it requires the Category 2 units, which are rental units in the proposal, to come along with the fifth free market building in the project. And that's the way the ordinance is set up for your consideration. BAC, the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, had previously signed off on the mix of units and the physical layout. Other discussion items, as were outlined at the last meeting, the community benefits. The one change to the community benefits from the preliminary plan is the applicant proposed the 0.25% RETA for public transportation instead of doing bus passes for the tenants of the affordable housing. The applicants thought that was a better contribution, and so that could be used for funding, helping fund items like the Basalt Connect. Other topics and updates from preliminary plan, the access, as was noted, the applicants have 3 access points: full vehicular access to Evans Road, full vehicular access to Willets Lane, and full vehicular access to East Valley Road. At the preliminary plan phase, David Myler, who's an attorney representing some of the homeowners at Park Modern and the Willets Townhomes, negotiated with the applicant to remove the parking in this area of the connection to Evans Road, as well as to provide screening between the buildings of Park Modern and the new access road. So the applicants came back with a plan to get rid of that parking as well as to provide landscape screening, and compliance with that is required in the draft ordinance. And then finally, the update on phasing and vested rights. The P&Z recommended a 7 years of vested rights as part of the preliminary plan review, but the council was accepting of the 10 years of vested rights that was requested by the applicant, so long as the public improvements would be completed within 4 years of the approvals. And so that has been carried over into the final plan ordinance, consistent with the council's direction at the preliminary plan level. So that is the update. Staff this evening would suggest hearing any comments the applicants have, taking public comments because it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion on the ordinance. And as I noted, we do have Michael Lipkin here this evening, Jeff Orsolak, and J. Ray Barlow.
Gentlemen, do you care to make any?
I don't think we need to hear much of this again. But I will, the one thing that didn't get much conversation when we did it was offering and recommending this quarter point for transit. And just to put that in perspective, because we never did, I would assume in today's dollars that's $500,000 to $600,000. So I'm hoping that can be impactful as we look more and more carefully at our carbon footprint and finally start doing something about it. So I just want to be ahead of that conversation. I think that's it for our comments.
Want to do public comment?
Yeah, I would open this up for public comment. I just want to make sure that we're clear about a couple things for the record here. I just have to ask James a couple questions. One is, James, is it in the opinion of the staff that the submission currently before us is fully consistent with the land use, with our land use code and 25% housing mitigation requirement?
The mitigation requirements have the flexibility for council to approve the phasing of the deed restricted housing that comes along. So in this case, you know, if the council chooses to, you could allow for the units for the missing middle to come along first before the category 2 units. That's in the council's purview based on the code requirements of 16-415. In addition, the category 2 mitigation requirements is what the code requires the applicant to provide affordable housing at.
So the application does fully meet the requirements of the code?
If council approves the phasing as the applicant has proposed it.
Thank you. And our code is 25% residential is, would you say, consistent with other municipalities in the Roaring Fork Valley? I mean, we have been kind of a lead horse on this matter for a number of years. I don't know how we stand these days.
I would say in the Mid-Valley, yes. I mean, Aspen has traditionally had higher mitigation requirements than we have had here in the Mid-Valley.
Great. And this mix, this 23 or 24 ownership and 22 Category 2 rental units has been reviewed, and we've got an opinion from Bach that they recommended, and P&Z took action. This is fully consistent with the P&Z.
P&Z took action, and it's consistent with their action. Bach provided their comments as part of the discussion to council at the final plan review.
Great. Okay,
basically.
just want to establish that for the record. So we'll take public comment, and then we'll come back and have discussion with councilors. Anybody in the audience that would like to address council on ordinance number 16? Is there anybody that's calling in virtually that would like? I think Mike Kozdraowski's hand is up, so.
Yeah, just a minute, let me.
Mike, you're free to address council. I have to advise you that we're limiting public comment on land use matters to 3 minutes, so we don't have a long list tonight, so we will be somewhat lenient, but please try to confine your remarks to 3 minutes. And clarify, if you wouldn't mind, please, whether you're speaking for Bach or whether you're speaking in a personal capacity tonight.
Well, I'm speaking for myself, Mayor, in a personal capacity, and as so both personally and professionally, as somebody who is involved and has been involved for many years in the industry. So good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me fine. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. First, I would like for the record to reflect that I have been a proponent of Parcel 5 from the start, and I appreciate what Mr. Lipkin has done in developing Willets in the town of Basalt. Probably more than any other member on Bach, I tried to work with Mr. Lipkin and his team to reach a creative compromise on the voluntary community housing component for this project, known as Affordable Housing 2. But the agreement on the community housing components before you tonight not only changes Basalt's housing policies on the fly, but more concerningly, it changes it for one developer by allowing him to direct the terms of what that new policy should be with very little scrutiny over the merits of his arguments. From a public policy perspective, this is putting the cart before the horse, because we should have had a broader public conversation before dramatically changing the scope and focus of Basalt's community housing program just to satisfy one project. So in my opinion, it is also unfair to other developers who have had to mitigate under the existing housing code. So in summary, I think this proposed agreement is unwise because, one, it ignores existing mitigation requirements and rules. Two, it redefines our community housing program for one project without broader community conversation, scrutiny, or debate on the merits of those changes. Three, it clearly contradicts Basalt's community housing guidelines and its stated purpose for providing mitigation to serve lower and median income working households. However, the developer defines missing middle far above the defined meaning of that term. Mathematically and statistically speaking, the middle is 100% area median income. This proposal more than doubles the definition of middle from 100% to 250% AMI. Also, the sales prices for the proposed new income categories, categories 4 through 6, would erase any difference in the price between deed restricted and free market housing for a townhome or condo sold in Basalt based on the most recent and reliable full year of pre-pandemic market data from the Aspen Board of Realtors, which was provided to you in your packet. And finally, this agreement may very well lead to the unintended consequence of creating an artificial price floor for all future deed restricted development, particularly for sale ownership housing. And I worry that this could lead to further erosion of housing affordability in our community. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Michael. Appreciate it. Anyone else care to address council? If not, entertain discussion from council.
The only thing I'd like to say is it didn't change the policy. Policy was met. I want to make sure that's on the record. Lipkin has added double the requirement, and the sizes of these units are 2/3 bigger than any affordable housing that's being built within the town of Basalt. Those things in and of themselves warrant looking at it at a different lens.
Anyone else comment, discussion?
I said this at the last meeting, and I'll say it again, that I think that Mike makes a good point, that we do need to review our current housing policy and add in some flexibility to have these kinds of unusual circumstances and move our affordable housing conversation forward. So I just want to request that we do that separately from an application review.
Fair enough. Anyone else?
I guess I'm a little fuzzy on if the requirements are being met, if the missing middle building is being built before the average Category 3 housing that is supposed to satisfy the requirement. To me, it doesn't feel like it's actually meeting the requirement because you're building another building first.
The code allows for council to have that flexibility of the phasing of the project. As far as the ultimate product that will be built on the site, it meets the requirement. So both the phasing and the number of units and the income category meet it. In this instance, the for sale product is going to be built first, and then the rental component after that. But ultimately, it'll satisfy the affordable housing requirement.
Any other comments?
How many total units again are there in the
155, 46 in employee housing.
Okay.
Deed restricted.
Yeah, 23 of rentals, 23 of the missing middle.
And so for 155, are we doing it 25%? So that would be like 38 and a quarter, or 30?
Yeah, it's 30% of residential units and 20% of the residential floor area is deed restricted dwelling units.
Yeah, I think under the straight, by the book proposal, the bare meet the minimum requirements, we're at 100 and, or what, how many free market units are in the proposal?
155.
There's
That's
100,
the total.
109.
109.
Oh, that includes the, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize
It's
that. Gotcha.
105, so 25%. And and maybe to respond to Angela also, so straight, sort of off the book, we would be asking for 23 or 24 affordable housing units. We're getting 46. And so, at least from my point of view, I think some flexibility and looking at this more creatively to achieve 46 units as opposed to 23, I'm personally willing to accept the ownership units first. And if you remember, when this proposal first came in, it was exclusively rental housing. And there was a lot of consternation, I would say, that came from Bach and others in the community, which is that, hey, we've got 260 rental units that we've built in the last 36 months and 27 ownership units. And rental units are very responsive to employer needs and providing housing for people that are entering the housing market. It has a lot of virtuous qualities, but it doesn't produce housing for long-term families and long-term residents. They'll be contributors to the community. So we asked them to consider some ownership housing. Well, they more than considered it. They came back with, a whole ownership plan. And so, I think through 4 or 5 meetings, I think where we are now is truly the wisdom of Solomon. We got half rental, half ownership. We've got Category 2 rental, and we've got some spectacular ownership opportunities in a pretty nice setting, I would say. That's why, I think that I asked those questions of James. We're getting our cake here and eating it too. I mean, we're getting, the code is met, and we're getting 23 additional units. And so I've given a lot of thought to this. I mean, I think that, you could argue that we could go back and re-examine the underlying entitlement. But those deals were cut in 2007 from what I've seen. I think that they, you'd be hard pressed to to go back and undo the overall Willits master plan, so.
I think
anyway,
the Willis
that's
thing
where I'm
actually
at.
started in 1998.
Yeah, I know. Lots of amendments along the way.
Mayor, Mike has his hand up one more time. Do you want to take additional public comment?
I don't think so. I'm sorry. You know, we've had the public comment. This is the council's opportunity to talk. We're not going to weigh in and have a, a public debate here. I think we're talking amongst ourselves here, so.
I appreciate all you guys have done on this project. I know it's taken probably more meetings than you want. I just do want to put on the record again that we need to have a plan for these ownership units, not you guys, but as a town, how we're gonna manage this, who's gonna manage it. I just really worry we're going down the same road that is creating problems in Aspen, where people can retire in these, and it almost defeating some of the purpose of why we're trying to build it in the first place. That's all I wanted to add. But I appreciate it. We asked for it, you delivered it. I just go back to your first, if I had a tape recorder of your first statements of why ownership doesn't work, I just would encourage anyone that doesn't like my comments to go listen to that, because they're very true statements. And
I can make one comment about that. You know, after you guys made the request, we consider sale. The first call we made the next morning was to the guy at Romero who is administering some of your programs. And I asked if he thought there was any difference between sale and ownership. And the immediate issue that came up, which I think your staff was already on top of, is you need to have a reserve. And that's the problem Aspen never had, was a reserve that was adequate to deal with the problems that were built into construction in the mountains from an Israeli architect in Montreal. And I think we've all learned as builders and architects how to be a little more prepared for what a long-term maintenance of buildings like this is about. But I do think the reserve really addresses your concern, and I think the Romero Group does, as far as I can tell, probably a pretty good job of administering your program now, and that's about all I can say.
Else?
I'd like to say that I also really appreciate your perspective and the work that you've done on the project. And Mike, I appreciate your letter and the work that you've done too. And what I see is that everybody in the room is kind of bringing their tools from their toolbox to like help work on this problem. I don't think that these 26 units are going to make or break our housing problem. And I do like the category 3 and 4, but I'm very concerned about the 5 and the 6. I think are too high. And when Mayor Bill says we have this good investment or home buying opportunity, when you look at what it costs to borrow money and how these homes appreciate, I don't know if that's true that this is a good home buying opportunity at category 5 and 6. I think it's kind of a trap, to be honest. Like I think that people are putting, if you have $100,000 to put down on this $1 million unit, and then you're not going to get as good of an interest rate because it's not a free market property. I just think that people aren't going to be getting, the return that so many people, or the wealth building that people are looking for from purchasing a home. And so I just wanted to say that on the record, that I am really happy for the 3 and 4, category 3 and 4 purchase opportunity. And so if we have to have these 5 and 6 category units to get that, then, maybe I'll vote for it. But I just don't know that the 5 and the 6 is what we need in the community, and I don't know that it's really good for the buyer.
Can I respond to that a little bit? Because I think there are only 2 5s and 2
Yes,
4s,
I
think.
know
or
that.
maybe it's only a total of 3 units. I thought it was really interesting to get a test out here. But these are affordable by the town's categories, and there isn't going to be a free market product. Now, these are small. They may, today there wouldn't be a buyer for those. By the time we build them, I simply don't know. But I thought this is an opportunity for us to all learn something. And if they're not a good deal, I think we put a lot of people in ownership of affordable houses at pretty low numbers in Aspen a long time ago, before there was the general awareness out there of what people were getting into. But I did talk to two of the bankers and said that this would be a comparable interest rate because of the quality of the product and the obvious demand there is for this product. So the banks aren't concerned about it from an interest rate standpoint. And, you know, the appreciation rate is what's really going to determine how good an investment this was once people buy things. And that has not yet been determined, and that is a staff decision to how to correlate an interest rate to, you know, cost of ownership. But, you know, I think they probably learned a lot of lessons in Aspen, but I think our staff here understands exactly what we're all getting into. So I think we're trying to learn from what's been done before. But, you know, I'm pretty passionate about providing housing for a middle class, and that product already doesn't exist. Now, some of the experience I've had is going back to the original approvals for Willis, and we built Lakeside, and that was the first affordable housing in Basalt, deemed affordable by design and density. The units were small, and they were on top of each other. And I don't know where they are now, but up until about 2 years ago, they pretty much were at pace with the Burlingame affordable housing product, but it was a free market housing product, which I gotta say has been very desirable, I think, for the last 15 years or 20 plus years for the people that have been living there. So, you know, but I have to say there is no more confusing problem in our valley than affordable housing. You know, I think the big thing I learned was that Basalt already had 100 units of category housing occupied by non-Basalt business, you know, people not working in Basalt. I figured we might as well work that off first before we start and maybe devote our deed restriction opportunity to preserve the community that kind of, you know, so it looks and feels and smells like the community here. And I can only say 100% of that disappeared in Aspen. That's the lesson I learned up there, and that's what I like to try to learn about down here. We do need to rethink all these things. You know, the idea that you're asking developers to come in here and meet code rather than try to be forward-looking is a little bit frustrating going through this process where I'm being told I'm not addressing a 12-year-old code when we have a current crisis. And I just can't tell you how much brain power and how much we have thought about this issue and how much we care about this issue. So that's about all I can say. But, you know, there isn't an ironclad answer to how to do this stuff other than I'd like to see the way Basalt thinks about these things as being as Basalt-centric as possible. And to me, that would be trying to keep the people that I see walking up and down Main Street year-round, that we're still attracting those people. So it's pretty simple for me, you know. I don't really care what the numbers are. For me, this is a people thing, not a numbers thing. So.
Yeah, there certainly is that dynamic. We're operating from 0% occupancy right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
0% vacancy, and so.
Well, I think I expressed early on, you know, that I'm not sure that high-end 250% is truly a missing middle. I feel like those folks can afford a free market home, but I'm not gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater. And, you know, since there's only a couple of units at that high end, I am willing to see what the market does with it. I mean, if there isn't a demand for it, then we'll know that didn't work.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, they're not gonna buy them, you know, if it doesn't seem like the right deal, or it's something we just don't feel good about, you know. So it's all about trying, you know, we're doing this to try to treat the community fairly, so if that requires being adjusted, we can talk about it.
Jeff, did you want to offer something?
I touched base with James there, and he was just gonna clarify one more thing on the affordable housing issue, if he could.
Yeah, just on the affordable housing requirements that we were talking about, the applicant has provided in the category 2 units, 15% of the units as affordable housing because they're doing the real estate transfer assessment too, which was in the code when they went through the sketch and preliminary plan review, so.
See.
But the additional units are on top of that. So I wanted to clarify that, so we've got it true.
Gotcha. Anyone else? Discussion, questions, motion?
Mayor, I move that town council adopt ordinance number 18, series of 2022 on second reading.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 18 on second reading. Pam, would you call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
No.
Len Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
and Bill Kane.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
so
Appreciate it.
you're gonna miss us, aren't you?
No,
Come by just for fun if you want.
I want to be on the Citizens Housing Commission, that's all. I've learned too much not to impose it on someone else. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I appreciate your input.
Okay, next order of business is resolution number 49, series of 2022. This is a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a memorandum of understanding between the town and the State of Colorado Energy Office. Ryan Mahoney.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this memorandum of understanding between the State Energy Office and the town is in part for us as we're getting ready to submit a grant application to the Department of Local Affairs. I think it helps that, that application along, knowing that we would be receiving support, technical support from the state for ultimately what would be this solar project that we would be using the Basalt Forward 2030 money for. And it's kind of a nice offering to us in that first off, it by signing this, it kind of triggers the state to allow them to free up staff time to help us out with technical advice as we move through a design and implementation of the solar project that we've been in a design phase for. And then some of the things that they have as benefits are sort of standardized contracts, so it's a very specific industry, and a lot of the twists and turns or nuances to that industry have kind of been called out in these contracts. Obviously, we would have Jeff be reviewing any contracts we enter into for the construction and maintenance of solar project, but nonetheless, they give us a head start. The second is engineering support. So we've been working with McKinstry, but as a design comes in, they could offer sort of a second set of eyes and kind of come along with us in the review phase so that, catch something that, might have been missed either on our side or that of our contractor. So, and then thirdly, they've kind of gone through a procurement process already, and they have a list of what they call energy service companies. McKinstry is one of those energy service companies, and so they've already been vetted. They have a relationship with them and understand that they're sort of leading edge in understanding how to deploy these types of projects. And then lastly, they. Oh, I guess I mentioned that part already. But I think what the ultimate goal of this is get the state on with us, submit that application. We've got the wheels turning on a design, and then hopefully that application gets a box checked in it as well for additional support for ultimate approval. So. And it is non-binding, so if at any time we wanted to get out of it, we could. But I think it's doesn't seem to be make the project process more onerous for us. So.
Okay, questions, comments? Peter, you look like you're ready to.
Well, I just want to, at no charge, anytime anybody's at no charge, I'm a little skeptical, right? So.
Well, the state's review is at no charge. We are under contract with McKinstry to do, the engineering and design,
Sure.
So that gets paid for. But then when we have this design, they would act as sort of that second set of eyes, and they don't charge for that.
You basically have like a coach hanging over your shoulder being
Yeah.
like, let's look at this, whatever. But we're paying for the project. That part makes sense. But
Yeah,
just-
yeah.
And McKinstry's worked with this state agency extensively.
Yeah, there's a whole list of companies that are, approved by the state already. And then coincidentally, we went through our own procurement process and, McKinstry came out on top. And so we've already been working with them. So it's, kind of a little bit hand in glove. It just, makes sense to plug these guys in at this point. And, we are not in the business of building solar. So I think, with having McKinstry give us that, design piece of it, and then, having the state energy office, with some free staff time just makes some sense, so.
Great. Be willing to entertain a motion to approve?
Mayor, I
resolution?
move the town council adopt resolution number 49, series of 2022.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, it's approved. So, here we go, State Energy Office, excellent. Thank you, guys. I think that concludes our business for tonight. As promised, well before 9 o'clock.
You guys were talkative tonight,
So here are the cards.
Oh, thank you.